Chapter 202. Mo Shi's sea dragon doppelganger climbed to the top of the mountain. It looked down at the 5,000-meter-long python in the valley. The python's blood-red eyes alone were more than 30 meters in diameter. Every white scale on its body was half the size of a basketball court. He had seen a lot of huge creatures in the past few days in the sea. For example, a 600 or 700-meter-long mutant whale. But he had never seen a giant creature that could reach 5,000 meters long. At this time, the python had also sensed Mo Shi's arrival. It looked up at Mo Shi's sea dragon avatar on the mountain peak with a hint of anger in its eyes. The next moment, it opened its cave-like mouth. It let out a terrifying hiss. Roar. This sound spread over a radius of tens of kilometers. All the mutant beasts within a radius of tens of kilometers fell to the ground in horror when they heard this roar. Even the boulders on both sides of the valley fell into the valley under this roar. At the same time, the sea dragon doppelganger felt a sharp pain in its head. Its body faintly felt like it was about to be torn apart. Mo Shi was also startled inwardly. They were both level 10 super mutant beasts, but the difference in strength was so great. It seemed that this old thing that had lived for nearly 2,000 years was not to be trifled with. Fortunately, the sea dragon doppelganger had also become a level 10 super mutant beast. Otherwise, the sea dragon doppelganger wouldn't have been able to withstand this sound wave attack. It seemed that he had to end the battle quickly. Thinking of this, Mo Shi condensed his dragon will. The next moment, at an altitude of 50 kilometers above the valley, 100 dragon will meteors with a diameter of 100 meters were formed. As soon as these dragon will meteors were formed, they quickly smashed into the valley. The python seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. It hurriedly climbed up the mountain peak next to it, trying to escape. However, it was too late. Boom! A dragon will meteor directly smashed into its body. Immediately, the surrounding mountain peaks collapsed. Large boulders rumbled as they rolled down to the ground. The giant python was hit by the dragon will meteor, and the dozens of scales on its body suddenly loosened. Blood flowed out, dyeing the snow-white scales red. Mo Shi was a little worried that this guy would not be able to withstand the attack of the dragon will meteor and be blasted into pieces. That would be awkward. Fortunately, this guy's body was quite sturdy, so he didn't die on the spot under the bombardment of the dragon will meteorite. If Su Fu were to know that this tiny mutated beast was worried that he would be crushed to death, he would most likely vomit blood and die on the spot. This was definitely not harmful, but extremely insulting. Boom 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 boom. The dragon will meteors continued to crash down. At first, the giant python was barely able to withstand the attack of a draconic meteor. It was still struggling to escape the valley. However, with so many meteors falling from the sky, everything within a radius of tens of kilometers had already collapsed. Where could it escape to? In the end, after the 100 dragon will meteorites landed, everything within 50 kilometers had turned into ruins. The valley from before was long gone. As for the white python, its body was already badly mutilated. There was hardly a single undamaged scale. It lay powerlessly in the ruins, breathing heavily through its nostrils. Every time it breathed, it stirred up smoke and dust. Mo Shi controlled the sea dragon clone, found an angle, and bit down. Roar! The white python roared powerlessly. Its body also struggled powerlessly. However, the bombardment just now had almost broken all its bones. It wanted to turn around and attack, but it couldn't do it at all. The sea dragon clone bit a bloody hole in its body. After getting into the bloody hole, it began to devour. It devoured very quickly, and in a moment, it had already swallowed more than 20 meters forward. The giant python writhed in pain, as if it wanted to throw the sea dragon clone out. However, its writhing seemed so powerless. About half an hour later, the sea dragon clone had already swallowed more than 100 meters forward. It was also at this moment that its body began to make cracking sounds. Mo Shi was delighted. He was finally going to break through. Accompanied by the cracking sounds, the muscles in the sea dragon clone's body were constantly being torn apart. Because Mo Shi's consciousness was in its body at this time, Mo Shi felt the tearing pain. He immediately switched his consciousness back into his main body. As for what kind of pain the sea dragon clone was suffering at this time, he didn't know. As the saying goes, when there's blessings, share. If there's trouble, I'll leave first. Mo Shi felt that this breakthrough because it was a breakthrough of a major realm, would definitely take a long time. Therefore, he didn't go back for a while. He planned to wait for half an hour before going back. During this free time, he flipped through Su Fu's memories. He found that this guy's memories were actually blurry. All kinds of memory fragments were intertwined and very chaotic. It was like a ball of wool that had been played with by a naughty child. He couldn't figure it out at all. After looking at it for a long time, Wuxia felt dizzy. Wuxia could only put down these memories and ignore them. Perhaps this guy had lived for too long, causing his memories to be in chaos. Or maybe something went wrong when this guy transferred his consciousness into the python's body. Wuxia didn't bother with it anymore. After waiting for half an hour, his consciousness returned to the sea dragon clone again. At this time, the 5-kilometer-long python had been swallowed until there was not even a trace left. Wuxia was secretly amazed. What AF * King Big Appetite? The 5-kilometer-long python was devoured in half an hour. This sea dragon clone was too good at eating. Since it had eaten so much, its body should be extremely huge at this time. It should be at least 500 or 600 meters long, right? However, Wuxia looked at it. How could it be 500 or 600 meters long? It wasn't even 50 or 60 meters long. At this time, the sea dragon clone was only about 20 meters long. F***. Wuxia cussed in his heart. After swallowing a 5-kilometer-long python, not only did its body not grow longer, it even shrank. Did it have to be like this? He hurriedly checked the attributes of the sea dragon clone in his mind. Species, sea dragon. Level 3 desolate beast. Ability, evolution by devouring, dragon will attack, sound wave attack. When Wuxia saw this, his heart pounded wildly. Level 3 desolate beast. Not only had the sea dragon clone broken through, but it had also risen 3 levels in a row. It had reached level 3 desolate beast. How much energy was contained in that giant python's body? But it made sense when he thought about it. That giant python had been devouring and accumulating energy for a breakthrough for more than 1,000 years. However, because there were restrictions on Earth, it couldn't break through. But the energy had been accumulating. This energy was enough for it to break through to level 3 desolate beast. Now that the sea dragon clone had devoured it, it naturally obtained all the energy in its body. It wasn't surprising that it directly advanced to level 3 desolate beast. Chapter 203. After the sea dragon clone broke through, it was directly promoted to a level 3 wild beast. It didn't look like it had changed much, but its body had shrunk. However, Wuxia knew from the memories of the 2 guys from the Flaming Land that the strength of a wild beast couldn't be judged from its appearance. In theory, the bigger it was, the stronger it was. This was for sure. But the bigger it was, the more energy it consumed. Imagine if it was 1,000 meters long, how much food would it have to eat to maintain its energy consumption? So for thousands of years, wild beasts had evolved the most suitable way of survival for them. Usually in their ordinary form, they could only grow to 30 to 50 meters long at most. However, when they needed to burst into battle, their bodies could rapidly expand and lengthen. So at this time, the sea dragon only looked 20 meters long on the surface. In fact, its body length in its battle form had already reached more than 130 meters. The most important thing was that after evolving into a wild beast, energy had appeared in all the cells in the sea dragon clone's body. When this energy gathered together and sprayed out, the power was extremely shocking. Knowing this, Wuxia was in a good mood. Controlling the sea dragon clone, he ran towards the sea. After the sea dragon clone evolved into a level 3 wild beast, its running speed on land had greatly increased. It could reach 30 meters per second. When it came to the sea, it jumped out of the water with a splash. In the water, the sea dragon clone was much faster. It could reach 50 meters per second. Moreover, wild beasts had a natural pressure on ordinary mutated beasts. When the sea dragon clone released this pressure, all the mutant beasts within a radius of 1,000 meters scattered and fled in panic. However, Wuxia withdrew this pressure based on the principle of keeping a low profile. It swam freely in the sea. At the same time, he said in his mind, "System, sign in for a special event." Killing such a big python was naturally a special event. Soon, the system's voice sounded frowny face sign in successful. Sign in event. Killed a 1,000-year-old mutant python. Sign in reward. Immune to sound wave attacks. Mo sure checked the skill description in his mind. Frowny face. Immune to sound wave attacks. Immune to any form and wavelength of sound wave attacks. The sound wave attack of the 1,000-year-old mutant python almost tore the body of the sea dragon clone apart. Now that he was immune to sonic attacks, he could treat such attacks as music to his ears. Moreover, this skill was equally effective on both the main body and the doppelganger. After signing in, Mo sure continued to wander in the sea. Now that it had evolved into a desolate beast, it was definitely an overlord in the sea. Not only in the sea, but on the entire earth, they were overlords. Even the current Mo sure had no chance of winning against the sea dragon clone. Because of the strength of its body, even the dragon will meteorite could only scratch it. The Qin crossbow, which was said to be able to break through all things, could only leave a shallow mark on its body. However, Mo sure felt that this was not enough. It wouldn't be long before the Flaming Dawn continent sent more experts over. Moreover, all of them were either scavenger hunters or scavenger hunters who were even stronger than scavenger hunters. If he were to rely on his own body, he would at most be able to reach level 10 super mutated for the time being. He didn't know if the restrictions on Earth would work on him. But even if they were useless, he would need to wait for a certain opportunity to break through to the level of a scavenger. Therefore, the best way to increase his strength now was to not try to increase the strength of the sea dragon clone. At the same time, on the coast of the East Sea, Zhao Gao took Bai Qi and fell directly on the beach. Huff! Huff! Zhao Gao gasped for breath. Bai Qi hissed, "Let's go, or the evil man Su Fu and his snake tide will catch up." Zhao Gao gasped for breath and said, "That's right. You make it sound so easy. I've been flying the whole way, and you haven't done anything at all." As he spoke, his body crackled and quickly shrank. In the end, he returned to a mutated crow. He squeaked. Bai Qi immediately grabbed Zhao Gao and put him on his shoulder. Then he strode in the direction of Emperor Qin's mausoleum. But before leaving, he looked back at the sea. He was puzzled. With the speed of Su Fu's snake tide, he shouldn't be far from us. Why can't I see him yet? The mutated crow hissed. Maybe he was delayed by something. Anyway, let's report to the emperor first. More than an hour later, the man and the bird returned to Emperor Qin's mausoleum. They reported to Emperor Qin that Su Fu was about to lead a snake tide to attack. Emperor Qin was furious. "Su Fu, how dare you rebel? If I don't take his head, I will be ridiculed by the world." General Bai Qi, immediately lead the soldiers to set up an arrow formation. "I want this evil man Su Fu to never return." Bai Qi received the order and immediately began to set up the array. However, they set up the arrow formation and waited for a full 3 days. Su Fu didn't appear. Bai Qi was terrified. Would the emperor think that he and Zhao Gao had committed the crime of deceiving the emperor? Although Emperor Qin was puzzled, it was good news that Su Fu didn't attack. Although the Qin army's arrow formation was powerful, with their current strength, it was not enough to resist the 200-mile snake tide. After a few days, all the troops in the depths of the underground palace would wake up. At that time, it would be time to restore the prestige of the Qin dynasty. Emperor Qin and the others naturally didn't know that Su Fu and his snake tide had been destroyed by Mo sure. At this moment, Mo sure was controlling the sea dragon clone to swim in the sea. He spread out his dragon will and constantly probed all the infected creatures around him. About half an hour later, a level 10 mutated beast appeared within the range of Mo sure's dragon will. He immediately swam towards the level 10 mutated beast. It was a mutated great white shark more than 300 meters long. It was opening its bloody mouth and swallowing any mutated fish it saw along the way. At this moment, it saw the 20-meter-long sea dragon clone appear in its sight. It immediately swung its tail and swam towards the sea dragon clone. In the eyes of this 300-meter-long mutated great white shark, the sea dragon clone was barely enough to fill the gaps between its teeth. Therefore, it didn't take the sea dragon clone seriously at all. Just like when facing other mutated beasts, it swam over with its mouth wide open. Seeing this, Mo sure smiled faintly in his heart. Let's test the strength of this sea dragon clone. He didn't use a sonic attack or an energy attack. He simply wanted to test the physical strength of the sea dragon clone. Seeing that the mutated great white shark was only 5 meters away from the sea dragon clone, Mo controlled the sea dragon clone and turned around. The 7 or 8 meter long tail suddenly swung towards the great white shark. Because the tail was so fast, it stirred up the seawater within a 5-kilometer radius, which was surging wildly. Wherever the tail swept past, white waves rolled, forming a fan-shaped mark. Chapter 204. Seeing this, the mutant great white shark was shocked. It hurriedly tried to dodge. But with its speed, how could it dodge the sea dragon clone's attack? Smack! The tail of the sea dragon clone slapped the mutant great white shark's head hard. Crack! The great white shark's head was instantly smashed into a bloody mess by this blow. A huge hole was directly drawn out of its skull. Even its entire head was bent 180 degrees. Then there was no more. The level 10 super mutant great white shark was motionless. Its body slowly floated with the waves. Mo couldn't help but be delighted when he saw this. The strength of a level 3 wild beast was actually so terrifying. Soon, he controlled the sea dragon clone to devour the great white shark, and then continued to swim forward. While swimming, Mo had restrained his aura all the time. As a result, many super mutant beasts swam over proudly, wanting to devour the sea dragon clone as their dinner. In the end, they were easily killed by the sea dragon clone. In 2 days, the sea dragon clone had devoured no less than 10 level 10 super mutant beasts. However, after being promoted to a level 3 wild beast, it was extremely difficult to advance another level. This matter couldn't be rushed. Mo could only control the sea dragon clone to swim in the direction of the Atlantic Ocean while devouring these level 10 super mutant beasts. 2 days later, Mo controlled the sea dragon clone and wobbled to the bottom of the East Sea. The depths of the East Sea were dark and lonely. It was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers. Even though Mo was experienced and knowledgeable, and his strength had reached the level of an overlord on Earth. But in the face of such a dark and deep environment, he couldn't help but feel a little afraid. After all, the unknown was the most terrifying. The psychological pressure caused by the surrounding darkness was simply unimaginable. If a timid person came, this huge psychological pressure would suffocate them on the spot. Fortunately, Mo had Dragon's Will. In the sea, although the detection range of Dragon's Will was compressed, it could still detect a radius of 100 kilometers. After activating Dragon's Will, he could see everything around him. The seaweed, the rocks on the bottom of the sea, the sand, and the mutant creatures. No matter what, nothing could escape the detection of his Dragon's Will. Only then did Mo feel a lot more relaxed. From the looks of it, this was a zone of death. It was impossible for life to exist here. However, when Mo scanned the area with his draconic will, he discovered that not only were there life forms, they were all level 8 mutant beasts and above. At this moment, a huge ravine appeared in front of him. Mo had already learned the topographic map of the seabed from someone in the base. At this moment, he already knew that this huge gully was the East Sea Trench. It is also called the Wuxia Trench. The trench was about 1,000 kilometers long and had an average depth of 6,000 meters. The deepest part was almost 8,000 meters. The cross-section of the trench was in the shape of a V. However, the trench was now surrounded by thick blood-red vines. The thickest one had a diameter of about 10 meters. They looked like thick blood-red pythons. These vines didn't stick to the ground like the vines on the ground. They followed the undercurrent in the sea and drifted left and right, twisting their waists and waving their arms at the mutated beasts that passed by. It was as if he was saying, "Come and play with me." Above the trench, countless huge sarcomas filled with blood vessels grew. Each sarcomas had a diameter of more than 50 meters. These sarcomas were like a sarcomas roof that covered the top of the trench. Mo didn't know if the sarcomas covered the entire 1,000-kilometer-long trench. However, at least within his detection range, the top of the trench was covered by sarcomas. All the sarcomas pulsed every half a minute. It was as if you were a living heart. It was disgusting and terrifying. A level 8 mutant beast passed by above the trench. A 5-meter-thick sanguisurincus wrapped around it. The level 8 mutant beast kept struggling. However, it was to no avail. A few more thick sanguisurincus stretched over. They dragged the level 8 mutant beast into the sarcomas. Mo Shi's draconic will could clearly detect that the Sanguisurincus kept sucking the mutated beast's blood. In just 2 minutes, the mutant beast was sucked dry and turned into a dried corpse. However, even if it was just a dried corpse, the mother nest didn't let it go. In the trench below the mother nest, the entire trench was filled with blood water. The dried corpse of the mutated beast was thrown into the blood water by the Sanguisurincus. The blood water immediately bubbled. Soon, the dried corpse was completely melted. Mo Shi was shocked when he saw this scene. The mother nest he saw in Manhattan only wanted to devour the entire city. However, the mother nest he saw now wanted to devour the entire sea. After devouring the sea, it even wanted to devour the entire earth. By then, the entire earth would be a huge mother nest. What a huge ambition. What was different from the mother nest on land was that the mother nest on land only devoured humans to create a blood pool to increase the strength of mutated beasts and zombies. However, the mother nest at the bottom of the sea was actually devouring mutated beasts to expand its range. Of course, it also increased the strength of a small number of mutated beasts. All the level 10 mutant beasts in the vicinity were created by the blood pool in the mother nest. Mo Shi connected to the mother nest's consciousness and found that they created these mutant beasts so that they could catch weaker mutated beasts for the mother nest to absorb. At this time, more than a dozen mutant beasts had caught many mutated beasts and thrown them near the mother nest. The mother nest's Sanguisurincus would quickly catch these mutated beasts and devour them. Through connecting to the mother nest's consciousness, Mo Shi knew that the entire East Sea Trench was a huge mother nest. And this was only a relatively small one among all the mother nests at the bottom of the sea. There were 28 trenches in the world, and 28 mother nests at the bottom of the sea. With so many mother nests, it was only a matter of time before they devoured the entire sea creatures and even the entire earth. Retreating from the mother nest's consciousness, Mo Shi looked at the huge snake-like Sanguisurincus and the huge sarcomas with a diameter of 50 meters. His eyes were filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. The next moment, he controlled the sea dragon clone and opened its mouth. Roar! An earth-shattering roar came out. Under this roar, the seawater at the bottom of the sea actually produced circles of ripples that were visible to the naked eye. Sound wave attack. This sound wave quickly bombarded the sarcomas on the surface of the mother nest. Boom 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 boom. Under the sound wave attack, the sarcomas exploded one after another. A large amount of blood in the sarcomas spread out. The top of the trench was instantly filled with the smell of blood. And under this sound wave attack, the level 10 mutant beasts around the mother nest all felt dizzy. There were even a few mutant beasts whose tentacles were directly cut off. His mouth also split open with a huge bloody wound. Chapter 205. Seeing that the level 10 super mutant beasts were knocked out, the sea dragon clone immediately swam over. At this moment, cracking sounds came from its body. Its muscles were also wriggling quickly. A moment later, it turned into a 130-meter-long behemoth. It opened its mouth and pounced on the level 10 super mutant beasts. The super mutant beasts hurriedly tried to escape, but their heads hurt from the sonic attack just now and they completely lost their sense of direction. Also, Mo Shi released the natural pressure of a wild beast, suppressing many of the super mutant beasts so much that they didn't even dare to move. They could only let it devour them. In just half an hour, it devoured more than a dozen super mutant beasts here. Mo Shi clearly felt that the energy in the cells in his body had increased a lot. And this was only the outside of the nest. Inside the nest, the entire trench was a huge blood river that was 1,000 kilometers long. In this blood river, there were thousands of level 10 super mutant beasts. Mo Shi was overjoyed. If it devoured these level 10 super mutant beasts, the sea dragon clone should level up. Soon, he swayed his body and entered the blood river in the trench. As soon as he entered the blood river, countless thick Sanguisurincus stretched out toward Mo Shi like blood-red pythons. Mo Shi's long way spread out. These Sanguisurincus immediately crouched at the bottom of the sea, not daring to move at all. Then Mo Shi used the sonic attack again. These level 10 super mutant beasts once again felt a sharp pain in their heads. They rolled and struggled in pain. Mo Shi controlled the sea dragon clone to open its huge mouth and devour them. The energy in the sea dragon clone's body kept increasing crazily. But at this moment, Mo Shi discovered that the Sanguisurincus around the nest, when they realized that they couldn't attack him, began to rapidly divide into thousands of tiny sanguisurincus. These sanguisurincus quickly interweaved above the trench. Then, a small sarcoma continued to grow on the sanguisurincus. At first, the tumor was only the size of a fist. But soon, like a balloon, it grew bigger and bigger. In the end, it once again formed a giant sarcoma with a diameter of 50 meters. Then, the second, third, and fourth sarcomas were formed. It was obvious that the nest was repairing itself. Mo took a deep breath. It seemed that the sonic attack was still inferior to his dragon will meteorite. If the draconic meteor came crashing down, the broodmother wouldn't have a chance to recover. He immediately controlled the sea dragon clone and opened its mouth. Boom! A fiery red energy shot out. This fiery red energy looked like fire, but it also didn't seem to be fire. That was because it could burn at the bottom of the sea. The surrounding sanguisurincus instantly shriveled up upon contact with the energy. In the next moment, they were all reduced to ashes. Then, the energy was sprayed onto the sarcoma above. When the sarcomas encountered this energy, they were like plastic being burned by flames, constantly melting into small black blood balls. In the end, it also disappeared. Then, this energy sprayed towards the blood river below. The blood water in the entire blood pool seemed to evaporate in the face of this violent energy and kept decreasing. This time, the sarcoma above the broodmother never recovered. This was the first time the sea dragon clone had used energy. It was also the first time Mo had seen an energy attack. Although the cells of Earth's creatures were extremely strong and could store energy, but they didn't have energy in their bodies. In other words, even if there was energy, it was all converted into the nutrients they needed to grow. Only by surpassing the restrictions of Earth and reaching the level of a desolate beast or a hunter could they release an energy attack. And the power of an energy attack was extremely fierce and domineering. Even Mo wouldn't be able to withstand this energy attack. And ordinary desolate beasts, although they had energy in their bodies, couldn't not release it. This was because energy attacks consumed a lot of energy. The energy in their bodies would soon be exhausted. But at this moment, the sea dragon clone didn't have this concern. Because every time it released an energy attack, it would devour a few level 10 mutated beasts. The energy obtained from devouring level 10 mutated beasts could completely replenish the energy he used to release an energy attack. And while constantly releasing energy attacks, he found that the blood vessels and cells in the sea dragon clone's body had become much stronger after constant cleansing. It turned out that desolate beasts could quickly become stronger in this way. However, there were powerful desolate beasts and even stronger mutated desolate beasts everywhere on the flaming origin continent. So ordinary desolate beasts didn't dare to release energy attacks casually. Instead, they used energy attacks as a life-saving trump card. So although they knew that constantly releasing energy attacks could quickly become stronger, they didn't dare to release them casually. But at this moment, the sea dragon clone didn't have this concern. After all, it was now the strongest on Earth. Even if it didn't have a trace of energy in its body, no creature could be its match. Just like this, Mo controlled the sea dragon clone to continuously devour level 10 mutated beasts and release energy. It took 3 full days to destroy half of the broodmother nest in the East Sea Trench. At the same time, it also devoured half of the level 10 mutated beasts here. And the cells and blood vessels in the sea dragon clone's body, after being constantly cleansed and strengthened by energy, finally reached their limits. Mo felt a faint pain of his muscles being torn apart in his body. He immediately switched his consciousness back to his main body. It was still the same saying, if there's trouble, let's enjoy it together. It was currently afternoon. Happy was knocking on the door. Mo got out of bed and opened the door. A ray of sunset fell into the room from outside the door. Outside the door, Happy's silhouette was outlined by the sunlight with a golden edge. Her originally black hair seemed to have turned golden in the setting sun. There was some concern in her beautiful eyes. Obviously, she saw that Mo had been staying in the room for the past few days and didn't go out much. So she was a little worried. Mo reached out to rub Happy's head and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just tired from running around outside a few days ago, so I slept a little longer." When Happy saw that Mo was truly fine, he felt at ease. But she still took Mo hand and pointed at the setting sun in the sky. Mo understood what she meant and said, "Okay, let's go out for a walk." Therefore, The two of them walked out of the corpse farm under the sunset. They took a walk in the base. Now in the base, everyone's face was filled with hope. In the first 30 years after the apocalypse, no one in the base had any hope on their faces. Because they couldn't see any hope in the first place. There were infected creatures everywhere, and the city wall might be breached at any time. Until now, Mo Shi's strength had brought too many changes to the base. Hope finally appeared on people's faces, and some smiles also appeared. Chapter 206. 2/3 of the people in the base were already zombie hunters or psychokinesis. The remaining 1/3 were also full of hope. Mr. Mo had said that as long as they trained hard, everyone could become a zombie hunter or psychokinesis. When they were strong, there were no infected creatures outside the city walls. They could expand their range of activity. They reclaimed a large area of land outside the city walls to plant wheat, corn, and other crops. They even had the leisure to cultivate an orchard to plant apple trees. It was estimated that in half a year, the people in the base would solve the most basic food problem. They wouldn't have to eat porridge and steamed buns every meal. After 3 years, they could often eat meat and even fruit. And all of this was thanks to Mr. Mo. So when the people on the road saw Mo Shi, they weren't as afraid as before. Some of the bolder ones even often greeted Mo Shi. Walking with Mo Shi like this, Happy's face often brimmed with a happy smile. Her smile was very infectious, and when the passers-by saw her smile, they all smiled knowingly. When Mo Shi was with Happy, he felt that he was also much happier. When it was getting late, Mo Shi and Happy returned to the corpse farm. Mo Shi lay on the recliner on Grape Trellis 5, looked at the starry sky, and slowly closed his eyes. Happy thought that Mo Shi was asleep, so she brought a blanket and covered Mo Shi. At this time, Mo Shi's consciousness had already arrived in the body of the sea dragon clone in the East Sea Trench. At this time, the sea dragon clone's body length hadn't changed at all. But when Mo Shi checked its attributes, he found that it had leveled up. Species, Sea Dragon. Level 4 Dire Beast. Ability, Evolution by Devouring, Dragon Psychic Attack, Sound Wave Attack. Mo Shi thought that after becoming a level 3 Dire Beast, it would take a long time for it to level up again. He didn't expect it to level up after devouring half of the mutant beasts in the mother nest. There were 27 other underwater mother nests in the world. If it devoured all of them, it would at least be level 7. Next, it took more than half a day for the sea dragon clone to devour all the mutant beasts in the East Sea Trench and destroy the entire nest. Only then did Mo Shi sign in at the seabed broodmother's nest. System, sign in. The system replied instantly, just like any other time. Sign in successful. Sign in location, East Sea Trench Mother Nest. Sign in reward, Million Sanguisurincus, Acid Breath. Both of them were skills for the Sea Dragon's clone. It was clear that when Mo Shi's consciousness was inside the Sea Dragon clone, most of his skills could be used by the Sea Dragon clone. But when his consciousness wasn't in the body of the Sea Dragon clone, the clone could only use a few skills such as Devouring Evolution and Dragon Will attacks. Now that he could sign in Myriad Sanguisurincus and Strong Acid Breath, it could be considered as giving the Sea Dragon avatar 2 more trump cards. After leaving the East Sea Trench that had been cleaned up, Mo Shi swayed his body and wandered around the seabed. The Sea Dragon clone, a level 4 wild beast, was definitely an invincible existence at the bottom of the sea. Any mutated beast that encountered it could only escape. However, when these mutated beasts wanted to escape, the cells on the Sea Dragon clone's body would quickly squirm. It shot out a Sanguisurincus. This Sanguisurincus would instantly pierce into the mutated beast's body and grow barbs. This way, the mutated beast wouldn't even have time to escape. The Sanguisurincus would drag the mutated beast over so that the Sea Dragon clone could enjoy it in peace. This was the magical effect of the Million Sanguisurincus. Not only could the Sanguisurincus shoot out hundreds of them at the same time, but it could also penetrate the defense of any wild beast below level 4. As for this Strong Acid Breath, it was even more powerful. The Sea Dragon clone could spit out strong acid. This kind of strong acid could only be withstood by the Sea Dragon clone's oral mucosa and acid bag mucosa. In front of this strong acid, anything else could only be quickly corroded. Even rocks were corroded to the point of being riddled with holes. Next, Mo Shi controlled the Sea Dragon clone and continued to go to other trenches. In each trench mother nest, there were at least 1,500 level 10 super mutated beasts. The sea dragon clone didn't let go of any level 10 super mutated beast. While devouring these super mutated beasts, the sea dragon clone's level was slowly increasing. At the same time, after more than 40 days of check-in, Wuxia finally reached level 10 Great Hunter. After becoming a level 10 Great Hunter and taking the modification liquid for a few days, his body finally reached its limit. No matter how much modification liquid he took, it would be directly expelled from his body. It seemed that he would have to wait for the right opportunity to break through again. So for the next few days, Wuxia focused on the sea dragon clone. After more than 40 days of devouring, the sea dragon clone had devoured half of the trench mother nests. It had now grown into a level 5 wild beast. The sea dragon clone, a level 5 wild beast, was quite terrifying in the sea. It could reach more than 50 meters per second. At this speed, devouring the remaining 14 trench mother nests would definitely be much faster than before. Wuxia planned to go to the Bermuda Triangle to look for the underwater dragon ruins after devouring all the trench mother nests. At the same time, on the Flaming Land, for tens of thousands of years, countless hunting grounds had been built on the entire continent. The entrance to each hunting ground was built on an island. On the first hunting island corresponding to the first hunting ground. In a huge factory, in the corridor on the second floor, a middle-aged man in his 50s was holding the railing, looking at the zombies in the cages below, howling and roaring at him. He was the owner of the first hunting ground. At this time, a middle-aged woman also in her 50s walked over. There was a hint of uneasiness between the woman's eyebrows. She said, "My son has been in the first hunting ground for more than a month and hasn't replied to any news. I tried to contact him with the interstellar communicator just now, but I couldn't reach him." The owner didn't turn around and continued to look at the zombies in the cages. He said, "Don't worry, as a level 10 Great Hunter, he is the strongest existence in the first hunting ground. Nothing in the first hunting ground can hurt him. Moreover, didn't you send a level 5 psychic to protect him?" The woman was slightly stunned, then laughed softly and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't ask for your permission and sent a level 5 psychic." The owner shook his head. "I've said it before, he's not young anymore. There are many things he should learn to solve by himself. It's just the first hunting ground. With his strength, it's more than enough to deal with the creatures there." A hint of worry appeared between the woman's eyebrows. "But why can't I reach him through the interstellar communicator? Why don't we send someone to check it out?" The owner thought for a moment and said, "I'll send a few people to check it out." The woman quickly nodded. "Yes, that's best." Chapter 207. On this day, Wuxia controlled the sea dragon avatar and finished devouring another trench mother nest. His next goal was to kill 2 people. One was the deepest trench in the world, the Mariana Trench mother nest. The other was the Bermuda Devil Delta in the Atlantic Ocean. However, on this day, there were guests from outer space at the South Pole's blood-colored waterfall. South Pole, Death Valley, above the blood-colored waterfall. 10 balls of light slowly descended. These 10 blue-white balls of light were very blurry at first. Gradually they became more and more solid. In the end, they condensed into 10 human forms. At this moment, Wuxia's virus avatar saw the sudden appearance of these 10 people. He quickly reported to Wuxia in his mind. One of those people saw Wuxia's virus avatar and didn't care at all. The mechanical arm on his right hand instantly popped out. It grabbed at the virus avatar's neck. It was so fast that the virus avatar couldn't resist at all. The mechanical arm exerted force. Crack! The virus avatar's head was directly twisted off. However, the virus avatar was formed by the virus. Even if its head was cut off, it could still be formed again. Seeing this, those people were slightly surprised. "Not human," a young man said as his telekinesis instantly spread out. As a level 5 psychic master, his telekinesis could kill all viruses and cells at the molecular level. When his telekinesis continuously attacked the virus and cells of the virus avatar could no longer heal. A moment later, the virus avatar turned into a pool of blood. The young man reached out and rubbed his nose. "A mere level 5 Great Hunter. Boring." Then, he said to the middle-aged man in the lead. The hunting ground master is making a mountain out of a molehill. In a broken place like the first hunting ground, any level 1 hunter can sweep through and crush everything. There are actually so many people here. A level 3 hunter, 8 level 1 hunters, plus a level 5 psychic master and me. A level 3 psychic master. Another young man also laughed. Why don't we all take a break and take it as a vacation? You can sweep through the first hunting ground alone. The level 3 psychic master youth rubbed his nose. Let's go then. A level 3 psychic master is an existence that can crush everything in this broken place. With the flaming origin continent, although a telekinesis grandmaster couldn't defeat a hunter, if they were at the same level, a telekinesis grandmaster could defeat a hunter. Therefore, a place where even a level 1 hunter could run rampant, he, a level 3 psychic master, could easily sweep all the way. The leader of the level 5 psychic master smiled and said, "Nothing is absolute." The person who came with the hunting ground owner's son was a level 5 psychic master. We've lost contact with them, so we should be careful. The group of young men said one after another. Got it, Uncle Hua. Uncle Hua, how could we dare to disobey your orders? Uncle Hua is right. But in their hearts, they didn't think much of it. A run-down place like the first hunting ground was just child's play. In the past, they couldn't be bothered to come because it was beneath their dignity. What kind of danger could there be in such a lousy place? Uncle Hua nodded to a LV-1 hunter. The level 1 hunter immediately took off his backpack from his back. He took out a barrel-shaped object and patted it lightly. He stretched out his hand and lightly patted it twice. The barrel-shaped object made a few soft cracking sounds, and hundreds of walnut-sized boxes popped out. In each box, there was a ball-shaped drone the size of an eyeball. After these drones took off, they quickly flew in all directions. The level 5 psychic master tightened his collar and said, "Let's leave this damned place of ice and snow first." Even though he was a level 5 psychic master, his body was no different from an ordinary person. Hearing this, everyone immediately activated their hover boots and flew towards the equator. At the same time, on the flaming origin continent, on the first hunting island. When the image of the first hunting ground was connected, the hunting ground owner's wife stayed in the monitoring room. The hunting ground owner occasionally came to take a look and patted his wife's shoulder lightly from time to time. "Don't worry, we've sent so many people this time. There won't be any problems." At the bottom of the earth. Mo sure knew the strength of these people from the virus clone's report. The strongest was a level 5 psychic master. Previously, he had easily crushed the bald level 5 psychic master. As for the rest of the hunters, although he had not directly fought with them, from the memories of the long-haired young man and the bald middle-aged man, he knew that the strength of the hunters was much worse than that of a great psyche master of the same level. Therefore, these people did not pose any threat to Mo sure at all. This made him heave a sigh of relief. He was originally worried that they would send out more psychic masters than the hunters. He did not expect that these small fries would come. In fact, in the Flaming Land, psychic masters were a minority. It was impossible for any random force to send out a psychic master. Thinking of this, Mo Shure's consciousness returned to his body. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the base. The group of psychic masters and psychic masters from the Flaming Land flew to the sky above the chilly base. The people who were busy in the base saw this group of people suddenly appear and fly over on hoverboards that had never appeared on Earth. Everyone's first reaction was disbelief. Below their feet is... This doesn't look like the technology of Earth at all. Who are they? As they spoke, the psychic power of the level 3 psychic master spread out. It directly covered the entire base. Suddenly, the more than 70,000 people in the base were pressed to the ground as if they were suddenly carrying a huge rock on their backs. Everyone's faces were filled with horror. They did not know what they were experiencing at all. One by one, they raised their heads with difficulty and looked at the 10 people in the sky. When the 10 people in the sky looked at the group of people on the ground, their eyes and expressions were as if they were looking at a group of ants. The level 3 psychic master floated in mid-air. He stretched out his hands, as if an immortal had descended to Earth. He began to shout to everyone in the base below. "You group of natives, listen up. From today onwards, your God will descend to the world." These 2 sentences were spread out along with the spread of his psychic power. It was as if it could directly hit everyone's heart. It was as if the deafening sound of everyone's heart was emitted. The psychic power of a psychic master had the effect of intimidating people's hearts. Everyone in the base looked at these 10 people in horror. Are they really gods? Oh my god, gods really exist. I didn't believe it before, even if I was beaten to death, but today, I believe it. Although they are not the image of gods in our imagination, I'm afraid that only gods can do this kind of thing. After the level 3 psychic master finished shouting, he lightly pressed on the multifunctional watch on his wrist. Soon, the three-dimensional projections of the long-haired young man and the bald middle-aged man appeared in mid-air. He asked, "You natives, have you ever seen them?" Chapter 208. Have any of you seen these two people before? The voice of the level 3 hunter was sent to the bottom of everyone's hearts with his telekinesis. Everyone's hearts trembled. Under the effect of the telekinesis of a psychic grandmaster, most people had no doubt that these 10 people were gods. God descends. God descends. It's really God. Of course, this kind of effect was ineffective against those with high levels of psychokinesis or those with strong willpower. Especially the few level 10 psychokinesis left behind by Mo Sure. They looked at the 10 people in the sky with solemn expressions. They're not gods, they're just mortals. A level 10 psychokinesis said solemnly. Seeing this, the level 3 psychic grandmaster snorted. You don't know what's good for you. As he spoke, his telekinesis instantly attacked the level 10 psychokinesis. Pop! The level 10 psychokinesis right hand exploded first. Then, pop, 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 pop. The level 10 psychokinesis whole body exploded like firecrackers. In the end, his flesh and blood slowly dissipated in the air like smoke after firecrackers. When the surrounding people saw this, their expressions changed drastically. The level 3 psychic grandmaster pointed at the three-dimensional figures in the air and sneered. I'll ask one last time. Have you seen them? Everyone shook their heads. No, I haven't. The level 3 psychic grandmaster shrugged helplessly. Since you bunch of aborigines can't provide any help to us, then there's no need for you to exist. As he spoke, his telekinesis suddenly spread out. As a level 3 psychic grandmaster, his telekinesis could easily wipe out all 80,000 people here. Among the 9 people who came with him, although some of them frowned slightly, they didn't stop him. After all, in their eyes, the humans in the first hunting ground were just a group of uncivilized barbarians. They were just a group of prey. If they killed them, then so be it. However, this time, when the level 3 psychic grandmaster's telekinesis spread out, it seemed to be wrapped by something and couldn't expand at all. Not only that, but his psychokinesis was also being forced back into his body. The level 3 psychic master's expression suddenly changed. There are other great psychic masters. He was a level 3 telekinesis grandmaster, but in front of the other party's telekinesis, he didn't even have the slightest resistance. Obviously, his opponent must be a great psychic master, and a psychic master whose psychic power far exceeded his own. Those hunters didn't feel anything strange. As for the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster, when he tried to spread out his telekinesis to help the level 3 telekinesis grandmaster withstand the pressure, he was shocked to find that his telekinesis was unable to spread out. To be able to suppress his telekinesis to the point where it couldn't spread out, the other party was at least a level 6 telekinesis grandmaster. How could this be? How could there be a level 6 psychic in the first hunting ground? Could it be that a level 6 psychic from the Flaming Dawn continent had come to the first hunting ground? Such a thing had happened on the Flaming Dawn continent before. Some people, for some reasons, sneaked into some hunting grounds. In those hunting grounds, he was the strongest king. Therefore, he would continue to live in that hunting ground. For example, a criminal who sneaked into a hunting ground. As each hunting ground was extremely large, as long as he didn't actively expose himself, almost no one would discover that he had sneaked into this hunting ground. Thinking of this, the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster hurriedly said, "We are all from the Flaming Dawn continent. We have no enmity with you, so I hope you." Boom! Before he could finish his sentence, the level 5 telekinesis grandmaster exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Even the level 3 telekinesis grandmaster beside him exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The people on the ground, who were still in a state of shock, had a drastic change in expression when they saw this scene. God has fallen. How is this possible? How can a god fall? Is the end of the world really coming? Naturally, there was a sober person who shouted, "They aren't gods at all. They are just a bunch of people who are pretending to be gods." At the same time, the remaining 8 people in the sky were all horrified. Among the 10 of them, the 2 strongest people were instantly killed just like that. Then, would the remaining 8 of them be any better? Just as they were panicking, a figure came from afar and slowly flew over. As he flew over, all the drones within a radius of 100 kilometers exploded. Mo Shi's cold gaze swept over these people, his voice icy cold. "I'll give you a chance. One-on-one, or a group fight." The 8 people looked at each other. In the end, it was still the level 3 hunter who smiled awkwardly. He replied, "You must be joking. How would we dare to attack you? We are only here to look for someone, Boom 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 boom. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt a mountain-like pressure fall from the sky. His body involuntarily fell to the ground. He crashed through the roof of a building and continued to crash through more than 10 floors. In the end, he crashed into the foundation of the building. The physical strength of a hunter was extremely strong. With Mo Shi's level 3 dragon will, it was still not possible for him to tear their bodies apart. But in this way, the level 3 hunter crashed through more than 10 floors, which was even more shocking. Mo Shi continued to look at the remaining 7 people. His voice was still cold. "I'll give you a chance. One-on-one, or a group fight." After he finished speaking, he saw that these people were all terrified. He shook his head helplessly. "Okay, I promise not to use telekinesis." The remaining 7 were all level 1 hunters. At this time, when they heard Mo Shi say that he would not use telekinesis, they were all shocked. Could it be that this person had both telekinesis and a hunter? Even on the Flaming Dawn continent, people who cultivated both telekinesis and hunters were rare. And as long as they grew up, each of them would be an overlord. If it was in the past, they would not have dared to attack such an existence. But today, this person forced them to attack. And he promised not to use telekinesis. They looked at each other. In the end, a level 1 hunter said, "Group fight." As he spoke, he tore open his sleeve and revealed the right mechanical arm. The entire mechanical arm was metallic black, and under the sunlight, it emitted a black luster. The next moment, the muscles on his right shoulder wriggled and started to grow. Soon, the muscles wrapped around the entire mechanical arm. It formed a 1 foot wide, 2-meter-long giant sword. The next moment, the body of the giant sword turned fiery red. Because of the high temperature, the air around the giant sword seemed to be distorted. When the people on the ground saw this scene, they all felt that their worldview was shattered. What the hell was this? The mechanical arm could stretch freely. This was no longer a technology that could be found on Earth. Now, it was heating up a genetic weapon? Was this a dream? Chapter 209. In the entire Chile base, almost everyone's worldview was shattered. It had been more than 30 years since the apocalypse. In these 30 years, most of Earth's technology had been stagnant. The only improvement was in the research of viruses. However, what appeared in front of them now was a pair of flying shoes and a mechanical arm. This was far beyond their knowledge. At this moment, the hunters also realized that if they did not make a move today, they might not be able to escape. Although this guy's telekinesis was strong, he was arrogant enough to promise not to use it. This was no different from crippling one of his arms. If the 7 of them worked together, they might have a chance. Thinking of this, their right arms all condensed their genetic weapons. Everyone's genetic weapons were also heated to a fiery red color. The 7 of them formed a circle in the air, surrounding Mo Shi. In the next moment, the 7 genetic weapons attacked Mo Shi at almost the same time. 7 weapons, sabers, swords, spears, and whips. One of them even had a red-hot mace. Seeing this, Mo Shi's eyes also showed some excitement. The reason why he did not use his dragon will to kill these people directly. It was because he wanted to see the genetic weapons of these people from the Flaming Land and the way they fought. Although he already had some understanding of the Flaming Land from other people's memories. It was not enough to understand from other people's memories. This was especially true for things like fighting styles, which required him to personally experience actual combat in order to have a personal understanding of it. At the same time, Mo Shi also wanted to see how his combat strength was without using his dragon will. Of course, as for the promise not to use telekinesis, that was just an excuse Mo Shi used to force them to make a move. When it came to a life-and-death situation, who would care about promises? Moreover, he did not use telekinesis to begin with, but dragon will. At this moment, the genetic weapons of these people had completely enveloped an area of 1 kilometer around him. The high temperature of the genetic weapons made Mo Shi understand that even his body could not withstand the attacks of these people's genetic weapons. Although he had the invincible Vajra body, the Titan dragon breastplate, and the dragon blood armor, these 3 layers of defense. But that was only invincible on Earth. Now that he encountered alien genetic weapons, he did not dare to casually take them head-on. His figure moved as he activated Dragon Shadow Step. In the blink of an eye, a giant dragon shadow was left behind. Then, he broke away from the encirclement. Those hunters were all stunned. What kind of freaking movement technique was that? They didn't even see it clearly, but they escaped the encirclement in an instant? Furthermore, there was even a giant dragon's shadow. What the hell was this? At this moment, in the building that had been smashed through, the level 3 hunter finally came to his senses. However, under the suppression of Mo Shi's draconic will, he was firmly suppressed there, unable to move at all. When the 7 hunters saw that Mo Shi had escaped from the encirclement, they immediately chased after Mo Shi. Mo Shi made use of his speed and instantly appeared beside a long spear genetic warrior. He also summoned the huge axe genetic weapon that he had not used for a long time. It hacked down towards the head of the hunter. The hunter hurriedly raised his gun. Boom! In the end, he managed to block Mo Shi's giant axe. However, under Mo Shi's immense strength, he was directly smashed to the ground. A human-shaped crater was formed on the ground. The ground around the crater also started to crack inch by inch. When the other hunters saw this, they were all shocked. What great strength! They could clearly feel that this person's level was 1 level lower than theirs. He had not even reached the level of a hunter. However, this strength was actually able to crush a level 1 hunter. What kind of freak was this? One had to know that on the Flaming Origin continent, the difference between a level 10 great hunter and a level 1 hunter was huge. A level 1 hunter could easily crush hundreds of level 10 great hunters. In terms of strength, they would be completely crushed. However, this level 10 great hunter was now crushing a level 1 hunter. Was there still any justice in this world? How would they know that Mo Shi had consumed so much Titan Dragon bloodline modification fluid? His body had already undergone a fundamental change. Although he had not become a true giant dragon's body, he was still far from being comparable to an ordinary hunter. Therefore, it was absolutely easy for him to challenge someone of a higher level and crush his opponent in terms of strength. Next, Mo Shi used the Dragon Shadow Step to constantly move between the 6 of them. From time to time, he would swing his axe as if it had the power to destroy the world. Even if these people were able to react in time and block his giant axe, they were basically sent flying hundreds of meters away by his abnormal strength. The more these people fought, the more shocked they became. Previously, they thought that this guy was just a level 10 great hunter and that they could easily defeat him without using their telekinesis. However, they never thought that this guy would not only not be at a disadvantage but also completely suppress the 7 of them by himself. He could still crush someone of a higher level than him. What kind of freak was this? At this time, Mo Shi was getting braver and braver as he fought. He thought to himself, still not using your trump card? He knew that all the hunters had an absolute trump card. This trump card was extremely powerful, and they would not use it unless they had no other choice. Since these guys still had not taken out their trump cards, he could only add fuel to the fire. Thinking of this, Mo Shi used the Dragon Shadow Step and instantly appeared behind a hunter. The giant axe in his hand fiercely chopped down toward the hunter's head. The speed of this attack was extremely fast and sudden. That guy did not even have time to react. He was split into 2 halves by the giant axe. Like 2 slices of pork, he flew far away. These 2 slices of pork fell directly into the base below. When everyone saw this, they all screamed and dodged. Some of the cowards were scared shitless. At this time, There were only 5 hunters left in the sky. They saw that this level 10 great hunter was actually so powerful. All of them were shocked. They looked at each other and then gathered in the same direction. The next moment, the 5 of them attacked Mo Shi together. When they were 2 to 5 meters away from Mo Shi, their genetic weapons suddenly shone brightly, emitting a dazzling white light. At the same time, their genetic weapons also released a red and white laser-like energy. This energy came extremely quickly. Swish, swish, swish. Mo Shi was already prepared. With a leap of the dragon's shadow step, he was already behind the 5 of them. At the same time, the energy released by the genetic weapons of these 6 people continued to extend a few hundred meters forward, sweeping toward the few buildings in front of them. Those buildings were directly broken in half by the force of the sweep. With a rumble, they collapsed. This was the trump card of a hunter. Every hunter had a certain amount of energy stored in their cells. This energy could allow them to be more powerful when attacking. When running, it could increase their speed. However, the most important use of this energy was to release it through genetic weapons in the form of laser-like energy. Its speed was extremely fast and its destructive power was extremely strong. When the energy of a level 1 hunter was released through genetic weapons, even a level 5 hunter would not dare to take it head-on. Chapter 2:10. When the energy was released, the genetic martial arts would become a hot weapon similar to guns and cannons. And the energy would become the bullet of the firearm. Its lethality was extremely high. Genetic weapons that were releasing energy were generally known as energy weapons. Even a level 1 hunter could easily kill a level 5 hunter with an energy weapon in a sneak attack. However, there was a small flaw in energy weapons. When releasing energy, there would be a short charging time. The lower the level, the longer this charging time would be. For example, these level 1 scavengers only had 1 second to charge up their power. But if one reached level 10, the charging time would be reduced to only 0.1 seconds. It was precisely because Mo Shi knew that their energy weapons needed time to charge up that he was able to use his speed to dodge their energy attacks. When the 5 hunters saw that the level 10 great hunter in front of them was actually able to dodge their energy weapon attack, their complexions changed again. It should be known that in their flaming land, there were no great hunters who could dodge energy attacks. Although their energy weapon attacks had a charging time, it was still not enough. But with the speed of a great hunter, it was impossible to dodge. After one energy attack, the dazzling red and white light on the 5 people's energy weapons gradually faded. It returned to its previous fiery red color. Mo Shi knew that this was because energy weapons consumed a lot of energy. Generally speaking, a level 1 hunter could only use an energy weapon once. After using it, the energy in their body would be completely exhausted. At this time, they no longer had energy and only had the strength of their bodies left. Whether it was speed or strength, they were far inferior to before. If they were level 1 hunters before, then after releasing their energy, they were at most half-step hunters. This was also why they would not use energy weapons easily. At this time, these 5 people had already withered after releasing their energy. In front of Mo Shi, they had no power to fight back. Mo Shi swung his axe one by one, chopping them all down. Only the 2 hunters on the ground were left. One was level 3 and the other was level 1. Mo Shi was too lazy to use energy weapons against those level 1 hunters. He leaped to the side of the hunter. That hunter had just raised his right arm and was about to use energy weapons. Mo Shi's giant axe had already been lifted. Ka, the giant axe instantly chopped at the joint between the mechanical arm and the shoulder. He knew that this part was the weakness of every hunter. It seemed that the defense here was extremely thick. A thick layer of cuticle covered the joint between the mechanical arm and the shoulder tightly. But as long as it could pierce through the thick layer of cuticle and hit the joint, it would be a fatal blow to the hunter. With this chop, the thick layer of cuticle on that person's shoulder was directly cut open. The giant axe chopped at the joint. The genetic weapon on that person's entire right arm was directly cut off. The genetic weapon wrapped around the mechanical arm instantly lost its fiery red light. The weapon on top of it instantly turned into flesh and dried up, revealing the mechanical arm inside. On the shoulder of the man, where the mechanical arm had been severed, sparks kept coming out. At the same time, blood. It looked like a bleeding robot. This scene looked very strange. When the humans in the base, They all felt that it was unreal. Was this King reality? This was basically a science fiction novel. After chopping off that person's genetic weapon, Mo flew up and kicked. That person was instantly sent flying far away. Bang 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 bang. He crashed through 4 walls in a row. In the end, his body hit a steel bar on the 5th wall, and only then did he stop. His chest caved in and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. He was no longer breathing. However, the steel bar did not pierce through his body. Instead, it was directly bent by his body. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hitting the steel bar with such force was like hitting the tip of a nail. No matter what, he would be penetrated. Not only was this person not penetrated, he even bent the steel bar. How perverted was this body's strength? But such a perverted body was actually kicked to death by this human. How terrifying was this human's strength? If the person who was kicked to death was said to have a perverted body, then this human who kicked him to death was the most perverted of perverts. When that level 3 hunter saw his companions who came with him, he fell from the sky one after another. He saw that this level 1 hunter was actually kicked to death by this guy. The shock in his heart was far greater than any other time in his life. What kind of monster was this guy? As a level 10 great hunter, he was actually able to crush 7 level 1 hunters by himself. In the history of the entire Flaming Land, there were occasionally examples of level 10 great hunters defeating level 1 hunters. But 1 against 7 and still being able to completely crush them, there was not a single one. This guy was not a human at all. He was a king animal. At this time, Mo slowly landed. He landed in front of that level 3 hunter. He released the suppression of his dragon will and slowly said, "I'll give you 3 chances to attack." The reason why he gave this guy 3 chances to attack was that he wanted to practice his own combat experience. In the future, it would be good to crush his enemies. But what if he could not? He needed combat experience to support it. Now that he could get some combat experience from this guy, he naturally would not let it go. That level 3 hunter heard this and felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to open his mouth and beg for mercy. But now it seemed that this guy had no intention of letting him go. Thinking of this, he became ruthless in his heart. Since this was the case, then he could only fight to the death. He put on a look of terror and implored bitterly, "We have no enmity with you in the past. I don't know how we have offended you. If we have offended you in any way, please be magnanimous and let me go this time. In the future, I will definitely." Speaking of this, the genetic weapon in his right hand suddenly condensed. In the next moment, he stomped his feet. He leaped towards Mo like a fish. At the same time, the genetic weapon in his right arm had already condensed. The fiery red long spear genetic weapon pierced towards Mo's chest. Mo used his giant axe to block the long spear genetic weapon. That level 3 hunter's spear head instantly turned and faced Mo. At the same time, the red and white light on the tip of the spear shone brightly. It was dazzling. Mo activated his dragon shadow step and disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already behind that level 3 hunter. But in the next moment, a laser-like red and white light suddenly shot out from the end of the spear. It instantly pierced through Mo's dragon blood armor. Even half of the Titan dragon breastplate was pierced through. Chapter 2:11. Mo also did not expect that the long spear genetic weapon could shoot out energy from both ends. At this moment, even his dragon blood armor had been pierced through. He made a mental note of this. After that, his figure flashed again and he appeared far away. The level 3 hunter was also shocked. Generally speaking, even if it was a level 5 hunter, after being hit by his energy, they would basically be disabled. But this guy was completely fine after being hit by his attack. How was this possible? He did not think that it was the effect of Mo's blood-red armor. On the Flaming Land, other than the energy shield on the armor, there was nothing that could block energy attacks. However, he was a level 3 hunter after all. Although he was shocked, his hands did not panic. The long spear in his hand shone brightly and instantly extended more than 10 meters. At the same time, the red and white light from the long spear once again shot toward Mo. And this time, he used the energy weapon to draw a few circles in the air. These circles sealed off all of Mo's escape routes. Mo Shi could only use the big axe in his hand to block in front of him. At the same time, the big axe instantly extended 2 meters high and 1 meter wide. His body was completely shielded from the attack. Buzz buzz buzz. A few soft sounds. Sparks flew from Mo Shi's big axe. The whole surface of the big axe looked as if it had been welded a few times. Several fiery red messy red circles were displayed. At the same time, under this high-temperature melting, even Mo Shi's genetic weapon was half melted. Mo Shi's heart trembled. The attack of an energy weapon was indeed powerful. One must know that in the past on Earth, there was nothing that could cause even a slight scratch on his genetic weapon. However, the level 3 hunter's expression was several times worse than Mo Shi's. This kid's genetic weapon could actually block the attack of an energy weapon? What the hell was this? One must know that on the Flaming Land, only the energy shield of a mecha could block the attack of an energy weapon. If one were to use a genetic martial art to block an energy martial art, one would simply be courting death. This was because anyone's genetic martial arts, even if they were a desolate hunter or a great desolate hunter, would not be able to withstand the attack of an energy weapon. This kid was just a level 10 great hunter, yet his genetic weapon was able to block his energy weapon attack. This was King ridiculous. At this moment, his Adam's apple moved. As a level 3 hunter, he could only use his energy weapon 3 times. This was the last time he could not use it so easily. Thinking of this, his figure moved. The hoverboard beneath his feet started to move. He flew out of the base in an instant. Mo Shi sneered. Trying to escape? Could he escape? In the next moment, Mo Shi's right arm swung in a circle, and the giant axe chopped downwards. The giant axe instantly expanded in the air. It was more than 200 meters long. Just like Panga's giant axe, it chopped down towards the level 3 hunter. The level 3 hunter thought that if he ran away, Mo Shi would chase after him. He could then use his energy weapon to launch a counterattack. In the past, his hit rate with this move was 100%. However, he did not expect that this kid would not play by the rules. He directly chopped down towards him. At this moment, it was too late for him to dodge. He could only hurriedly raise his spear to block the attack, wanting to block the giant axe. Boom! There was a loud sound. The giant axe directly brought the level 3 hunter down from the sky. On the ground, a huge crack that was more than 500 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 10 meters deep instantly appeared. The edge of the crack was as smooth as a mirror. At the end of the crack, 2 30-meter-tall buildings also had a 10-meter-wide crack on them. The afterglow of the setting sun passed through this crack. It was like the gate to heaven. When everyone in the base saw this scene, they all widened their eyes and opened their mouths wide. This destructive power was too shocking. In the center of this huge gully, the level 3 hunter's lower body had already sunk deep into the soil. His upper body was still holding his long spear genetic martial art, maintaining a blocking posture. On his long spear genetic martial art, there was a mark that was about 1 centimeter deep. In the end, Mo Shi's genetic martial art was not able to split apart that guy's long spear genetic martial art with his axe. However, on that guy's right arm, at the interface between the mechanical chop and his shoulder, sparks kept coming out. Moreover, blood kept seeping out. It turned out that although Mo Shi was not able to split apart his genetic martial art with his axe, the power of the axe was too great. However, the force of this axe was too great. It directly shook the interface between his mechanical arm and shoulder, causing it to malfunction. That level 3 hunter looked at the interface of his right arm in disbelief. How was this possible? How could this guy be so strong? The terrifying degree of this strength was actually much stronger than his, a level 3 hunter. He was just a level 10 great hunter. Normally, he would be able to crush him easily. How could he be so strong now? Was it because he was too weak, or was this kid too strong? Of course, he did not know that Mo Shi's body had been modified by the modification liquid. Naturally, it could not be measured by the strength of a normal great hunter. It could be said that Mo Shi's strength was already equivalent to a level 4 hunter's. Naturally, it was not something that this level 3 hunter could withstand. At this time, Mo Shi saw that the level 3 hunter's genetic martial art had malfunctioned and could no longer display stronger combat power. He was too lazy to continue entangling with him. The huge axe chopped down once again. Kacha, the level 3 hunter's genetic martial art was immediately split into two. At the same time, the huge axe fell on the level 3 hunter's head. The level 3 hunter was split into two halves. At this point, all the invaders were wiped out. Mo Shi closed his eyes slightly, recalling the battle scene just now. He had a deeper understanding of the strength, speed, and fighting style of the hunters. He made an estimation in his mind. With his current strength, without using his telekinesis, he could crush a level 3 hunter. If he encountered a level 4 hunter, it would be a 50-50 chance. If he only used his telekinesis, he could also crush a level 3 hunter. If the Long Nian Shi and the hunters used all their methods, crushing a level 5 hunter should not be a problem. If he encountered a level 6 hunter, it should be a 50-50 chance. As a level 10 great hunter and a level 3 Long Nian Shi, he was able to crush a level 5 hunter by so many levels. Even on the Flaming Dawn continent, he was considered a rare talent. Of course, Mo Shi still had the absolute trump card of summoning the bloodbreeds. So in fact, his overall strength was stronger. As for how strong he was, he did not use the skill of summoning the bloodbreeds, so he did not know. Of course, this skill could not be used casually. The strength, number, and type of the things that were summoned were all random. And it did not distinguish between friend and foe. At that time, if he was also killed, it would be awkward. Chapter 2:12. Mo Shi killed these 10 people. He left a huge ravine more than 200 meters long in the chilly base. After that, he ignored the humans in the chilly base. He took a step forward, leaving behind a 100-meter-tall dragon shadow, and then disappeared. After a while, the dragon shadow also slowly disappeared. In the chilly base, all the humans felt like they were dreaming. From the arrival of the 10 godlike powerhouses to the moment they were pressed to the ground by an invisible force. Then, the powerhouse with a pair of energy wings appeared. Finally, he killed the 10 people and left. Only 5 minutes had passed. All the 11 people were unbelievably powerful. They were so powerful that it was beyond their understanding. Especially the human with the pair of energy wings. He was so powerful that even the 10 powerhouses were afraid of him. If the 10 powerhouses were gods, then the human with a pair of energy wings could be called the God Slayer. No, Slayer was not enough to describe him. To be more precise, he was the God Slayer. From that day onwards, this powerful God Slayer never appeared in the chilly base again. However, the legend of the God Slayer had been circulating in the chilly base for thousands of years. At the same time, on the first hunting island of the Flaming Dawn continent. In the monitoring room, the hunting madam saw that all the monitoring screens had dimmed. She was so shocked that her face turned pale. She quickly shouted to the outside of the monitoring room. "Someone, come and take a look at the monitors." Someone. Soon, the person in charge of the monitoring room rushed over and carefully checked all the monitors. In the end, he came to a conclusion that made everyone feel uneasy. "Madam, all the drones have been destroyed." One had to know that the people who went this time had brought 100 drones. 100 drones were enough to cover a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Now they were all destroyed at almost the same time. What did this mean? In her uneasiness, the hunting madam quickly went to the hunting master's office and looked for him. "Son, something happened to our son." The hunting master's expression also changed. "What's going on?" "All the drones have been destroyed," the hunting madam said with a sobbing tone. The hunting master comforted his wife. "Don't worry. I'll use the interstellar communication to contact them first." As he spoke, he immediately ordered someone to connect to the interstellar communication of those people. However, after connecting for more than half an hour, there was no response. The lady of the hunting ground could not stop her tears from gushing out. She patted the hunting ground master's arm and said, "You must save our son. He is our only son." The hunting ground master's brows were tightly knitted together. However, he still comforted his wife. It might be the magnetic field of the first hunting ground. "I will ask Xianxia to bring the Sandstorm Mercenary Regiment to the first hunting ground to have a look." The head of the hunting ground quickly nodded and patted his wife's shoulder. "Don't worry." 5 days later, a handsome young man with a height of 1.8 meters and a woman with an exaggerated figure walked in quickly. That woman had an extremely exaggerated figure, But she also had a beautiful face. With a devilish figure and an angelic face, these words were tailor-made for her. As soon as the woman appeared, she nervously asked the hunting ground owner and his wife, "Dad, Mom, did something happen to little brother when he went to the hunting ground?" Mrs. Hunting Ground just cried, unable to say a word. The hunting ground master shook his head with a hint of worry between his brows. "I'm not sure yet. It has been more than 40 days since your brother went to the hunting ground, and there is still no news from him. I sent 10 people, but there is still no news from him. And the 100 drones they brought also lost contact almost at the same time. That's why I asked Xianxia to come over and bring some mercenaries to have a look." The handsome young man named Xianxia heard this and his face suddenly became solemn. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law, don't worry. I brought the vice-captain and several captains of our mercenary regiment. Basically, they were all level 7 hunters. There are also 5,000 members of the mercenary group and me, a LV-8 hunter. Oh right, I also brought the cheetah mech of the mercenary regiment. Let's make a simple plan. We will set off tomorrow morning and find little brother no matter what," he said very firmly. The hunting ground master showed a hint of gratitude in his eyes and patted his shoulder heavily. "Xianxia, it's all on you." The hunting ground master's wife also nodded and said, "Xianxia, it's all thanks to you." At this time, the woman with the exaggerated figure also said, "Xianxia, I'll go with you." Xianxia shook his head and said with concern, "Bertha, the first hunting ground may have been very safe before, but it is no longer safe now. You can stay here with my in-laws and wait for my good news." Bertha said stubbornly, "How can I be at ease if there is no news from little brother? I must go with you. I'm a level 7 psychic master, much stronger than those in the mercenary regiment." This Xianxia seemed to be in a dilemma. The hunting ground master pondered for a moment and took a deep breath. "Xianxia, take Bertha with you." Xianxia shook his head helplessly and said, "Okay, Bertha, remember when you go there, you must stay by my side at all times. If you are in any danger, I will be able to protect you immediately." Bertha nodded obediently and said, "Okay." Soon, Xianxia, Bertha, and several senior members of the Sandstorm Mercenary Regiment were in the meeting room to draw up a plan of action. The vice-captain said to Xianxia and Bertha, "Captain, Madam Captain, we have too many people this time, so we will split into 2 coordinates. You will take 2,500 people to the first teleportation point. The captains and I will take 2,500 people to the second teleportation point. When we get there, we will see if we will meet up directly or split up to search." Xianxia nodded and said, "Okay, we will do as you say. Now, let's split up and prepare. We will leave in half an hour." After the mercenary regiment left, Xianxia came to Bertha and gently put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't worry, little brother will be fine." Bertha nodded and said, "Xianxia, for our family, you put down so many important things and rushed over here. You even personally brought people to the first hunting ground. You are so nice." Xianxia shook his head and said, "We are already here. Isn't your little brother my little brother? How can I not care about my little brother's business?" Bertha nodded and said after a moment of silence, "Xianxia, this time when little brother comes back, let's have a child." Xianxia heard this and was slightly stunned. A moment later, his eyes were filled with excitement. "Bertha, is this true?" Bertha left a kiss on Xianxia's face and said with a smile, "Silly, when have I ever lied to you?" Xianxia immediately laughed like a child. That's great, Bertha, I love you." 10 days ago, Wuxia returned to base C1 after wiping out the group of people. Under the grape trellis of the corpse farm, Wuxia was lying on a deck chair, basking in the sun while thinking about something. Chapter 213. 10 days ago, Wuxia had just killed those hunters and psychic grandmasters. Under the grape trellis of the corpse farm, Wuxia was lying on a recliner with his eyes slightly closed. It looked like he was resting, but in fact, he was thinking about something. Last time he killed 2 people. This time there were 10. If he killed these 10 people this time, how many would come next time? Furthermore, he was certain that the next one would be even stronger than this one. He had to think of a way to make them unable to come to Earth in the future, or to make them afraid to come to Earth. It was impossible to make them unable to come to Earth. The Antarctic blood waterfall was just a coordinate. Even if the blood waterfall was destroyed, the coordinates were still there, and they would still come again. And if he wanted them to not dare to come to Earth, he could only desperately improve his strength. Upgrading the sea dragon clone to a level 10 wild beast as soon as possible was one way. But this was treating the symptoms and not the root cause. Although there weren't many hunters on the Flaming Origin continent, who could guarantee that the hunting ground master wouldn't be able to find a hunter to help? So Mo sure thought about it and felt that this matter had to be solved from the source. After thinking for half an hour, he suddenly had a bright idea. He had an idea. But the most important thing now was to improve the strength of the sea dragon clone. Mo sure had planned to destroy the other undersea mother nests before going to the Mariana Trench mother nest and Bermuda. That would be safer. But now, he had to hurry up and improve his strength, the faster the better. So he decided to go directly to the Mariana Trench mother nest later. System: sign in for a special event. Killing those hunters and great hunters was naturally a special event. The system's voice answered quickly. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Kill intruder. Sign in reward. Flame Dragon Battle Axe. Mo sure checked the reward in his mind. Flame Dragon Battle Axe. Inject the energy in the body into the genetic weapon, and the genetic weapon can evolve into the Flame Dragon Battle Axe. The Flame Dragon Battle Axe is invincible and indestructible. Best effect on the genetic and energy weapons of the hunters. Seeing this reward, Mo sure revealed a faint smile on his face. Today, the energy weapon of the level 3 hunter had made him feel the pressure from the energy weapon. Under the attack of the energy weapon, even the dragon blood armor could be penetrated. Previously, it was sometimes written as Blood Dragon Battle Armor. Correction here. It's Dragon Blood Battle Armor. Even his genetic martial arts had almost been pierced through. This power was ridiculous. Now that he had the Fire Dragon Battle Axe, he could defend against the opponent's energy weapon. Secondly, in terms of offense, they were much more domineering and invincible than before. After signing in, Mo sure used the Blood Dragon's eye to look at Happy, who was busy. He saw that Happy's level was still at ? She didn't know when her talent would awaken. I'm Happy. Mo sure shouted at Happy. Happy put down the work in his hands and walked over. She stared at Mo sure with her big, expressive eyes. Mo sure said, "It's getting hot. You should rest for a while. Don't be so busy." Happy's smile bloomed, and it was extremely infectious. He gestured, "If I'm busy, I'll feel useful. Otherwise, others will say that Brother Mo's woman is useless." Mo sure smiled and shook his head. "Happy, you don't have to do anything. When the time comes, you'll realize that you're more useful than anyone else." Mo sure still didn't know what Happy's talent was. However, just looking at the difficulty of unlocking it, after being in the virtual dragon palace for so long, 2/3 of the people in the base had already become zombie hunters or psychokinesis. However, her talent hadn't been unlocked yet. Even if one were to use their toes to think, they would know that this was definitely an incredible talent. Happy naturally didn't know this. She only felt that Brother Mo was comforting her. She was very happy about Brother Mo's concern. However, she didn't put down the work in her hands. Brother Mo was so good to her. How could she drag him down? When Mo sure saw that Happy was busy, he stopped trying to persuade him. Instead, he closed his eyes and ordered a clone to go to the South Pole Blood Waterfall. At the same time, his consciousness had already entered the body of the Sea Dragon clone at the bottom of the sea. He controlled the Sea Dragon clone and headed towards the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. The current Sea Dragon clone had already become a level 5 desolate beast. It was unstoppable in the sea. Moreover, its speed had reached 50 meters per second. Even so, because the distance was too far, it took 2 days to reach the top of the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench was more than 2,500 kilometers long and more than 70 kilometers wide. The deepest part was 11,000 meters. It was the deepest place in the world's oceans. Before the apocalypse, this was one of the harshest places on Earth. It was completely dark, high pressure, and cold. Very few fish lived in this place. But now, Mo sure used his dragon consciousness to explore the 70-kilometer wide trench, which was covered by huge sarcomas with a diameter of 100 meters. It looked like a layer of huge blood-red grapes had been spread here. Around the trench, thousands of thick Sanguisurincus completely covered the bottom of the sea. The thickest Sanguisurincus reached more than 20 meters. Most Sanguisurincus were close to the surface of the sea, but there were also Sanguisurincus that were like kelp, drifting with the undercurrents at the bottom of the sea. Once a mutant beast passed by, they would entangle it and drag it into the nest. Dozens of Sanguisurincus, after sensing the arrival of Mo-Shi's sea dragon clone, immediately swayed excitedly and entangled the sea dragon clone. The long way that Mo-Shi had been cultivating for months was activated. In the next moment, these Sanguisurincus instantly withered. They didn't even have a chance to retreat. The nest obviously also sensed the power of this mutant beast. All the Sanguisurincus stayed away from the sea dragon clone for a short period of time. At the same time, these Sanguisurincus were also secretly wary of the sea dragon clone. Mo-Shi ignored these Sanguisurincus. Instead, he stared at the 100-meter-long sarcomas. This nest was different from the other ones at the bottom of the sea. The other sarcomas were only 50 meters in diameter at most. This nest's sarcomas, however, were an astonishing 100 meters in diameter. And the sarcomas of the other nests could be considered an entrance and exit. Infected creatures could enter and exit through the sarcomas. They entered the sarcomas, recovered their bodies in the blood pool, and strengthened themselves before leaving the nest to catch mutant beasts. But when Mo-Shi just probed with his dragon will, he found that not a single mutant beast entered or exited through the sarcomas. All the level 10 super mutant beasts, after capturing the other mutant beasts, placed them near the nest. Then they would leave without stopping to continue catching mutant beasts. Mo-Shi couldn't figure out why with his dragon will. But when he looked with the blood dragon's eye, he immediately understood. It turned out that there was a figure slowly swimming in every sarcomas here. And those figures were basically level 10 super mutant beasts. Every sarcomas here was actually an egg. Chapter 2:14. These sarcomas seem to have some kind of protective measures. When Mo-Shi used his level 3 dragon's will to investigate, he couldn't detect anything strange inside. However, when he used the blood dragon's eye to look through the surface to see the essence, he was surprised to find that there was a mutated beast 70 to 80 meters long in every sarcoma here. Moreover, every mutated beast had reached level 10 super mutated. If all the sarcomas in the entire Mariana Trench mother nest were eggs, then how many level 10 super mutated beasts would there be in the entire mother nest? There was no need to go to other trenches. Just devouring all the level 10 super mutated beasts here would definitely be able to advance to level 10 wild beasts. However, Mo-Shi didn't rashly go to the sarcomas to devour. Instead, he directly activated the 1000 Sanguisurincus skill. The sea dragon clone's body reached 150 meters long in a short period of time. Then the skin and flesh on its body wriggled quickly. More than 50 Sanguisurincus were ejected. These 50 Sanguisurincus instantly shot out like lightning. They directly pierced through more than 50 sarcomas. They pierced into the bodies of the level 10 super mutated beasts in the sarcomas. Then, the Sanguisurincus turned into thousands of tiny Sanguisurincus in the bodies of the super mutated beasts and probed into all parts of the bodies of these super mutated beasts. They continuously sucked the blood of these level 10 super mutated beasts. Moreover, these tiny Sanguisurincus could also spit out strong acids that corroded the bones and muscle tissues of these super mutated beasts. In the end, their entire bodies turned into blood and were absorbed by the Sanguisurincus. From the outside, these Sanguisurincus looked like straws that were inserted into the sarcomas. The sea dragon clone continuously sucked the blood of these sarcomas through the Sanguisurincus. Using this method, it actually devoured 50 level 10 super mutated beasts in just 5 minutes. After the sarcomas were sucked clean, they all deflated. Another 50 Sanguisurincus popped out of the sea dragon clone's body and continued to suck the other 50 level 10 mutated beasts. Mo-Shi was secretly delighted. Using this method to devour level 10 mutated beasts was much more efficient than before. In the past, it would take the sea dragon clone about half an hour to devour a level 10 super mutated beast. But now, it had devoured 50 of them within 5 minutes. At this rate, it would probably take 3 to 5 months to devour all the sarcoma eggs in the Mariana Trench. Of course, while the sea dragon clone was devouring, Mo-Shi was also constantly probing the surroundings with his dragon consciousness. This was especially true for the broodmother nest in the trench, which was filled with a thick smell of blood. He had a hunch that this mother nest wasn't simple. Although the sea dragon clone, a level 5 wild beast, could already crush any super-mutated beast. However, no matter how strong they were still weak in the face of some natural disasters. Therefore, even now, Mo was still very cautious in all his actions in these trenches. The devouring took 5 days. During these 5 days, Mo couldn't remember how many level 10 super-mutated beasts the sea dragon clone had devoured. He only knew that during these 10 days, the broodmother nest Sanguisurincus had floated over several times, trying to attack the sea dragon clone. In the end, it was easily repelled by Mo's long way. At the same time, after devouring a large number of level 10 super-mutated beasts, the sea dragon clone had finally reached the level of a level 9 wild beast. With its current strength, even if Mo's main body were to face it head-on, it would be reduced to dregs in an instant. However, during these few days, Mo had always felt a little uneasy. Perhaps it was his combat intuition that had been cultivated in long-term battles. He felt that this uneasiness came from the bottomless Mariana Trench below. The entire trench was filled with blood. Even if he probed with his dragon consciousness, he couldn't completely explore the bottom of the trench. He could only pray in his heart. He hoped that the sea dragon clone could rise to a level 10 wild beast as soon as possible, and then leave this damned place as soon as possible. After swallowing for another 10 minutes or so, Mo compared the surrounding terrain with the Mariana Trench that he had asked someone to check. This was already the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. It was 11,000 meters deep. That was 11 kilometers. The uneasiness in Mo's heart grew even more. At this moment, above the blood river in front of him, a mountain peak suddenly emerged. This mountain peak was in the shape of a pyramid. Just the part exposed above the blood river was more than 50 meters high. At the same time, a circular cave suddenly appeared in the center of the mountain peak. The circular cave was about 50 meters in diameter, and it was extremely round. Obviously, this couldn't have been a naturally formed cave. Under such an oceanic trench, the sudden appearance of such a mountain peak above the fishy bloody river still made one's hair stand on end. Mo was about to use his dragon consciousness to explore the cave when a huge suction force suddenly came from the circular cave. It sucked the entire sea dragon clone in that direction. Mo frowned, and the sea dragon clone's tail quickly swayed, trying to break free from this suction force. But this suction force was so strong that no matter how the sea dragon clone swayed its body, it couldn't break free. Mo simply controlled the sea dragon clone and directly turned its head. The sea dragon clone opened its huge mouth. Puff, a stream of viscous green liquid gushed out from it. As the huge cave kept sucking in the sea dragon clone, it directly sucked in the strong green acid. The next moment, puff, even in the sea, Mo could see that the huge hole was constantly emitting green smoke. At the same time, a pungent stench spread out. The surrounding Sanguisurincus withered instantly when this pungent smell spread over. At the same time, the mountain peak kept shaking violently from side to side and shrank under the bloodwater. An extremely painful wail could be heard from the pool of blood. Roar! Roar! However, it was obviously not over yet. Just over a minute later, in the blood river ahead, another 50-meter-tall mountain peak emerged. And this mountain peak continued to rise. Soon, a second and third round cave appeared on the mountain peak. All the round caves had a diameter of more than 50 meters. Soon, the mountain peak, like a sea-stabilizing needle, emerged from the blood river high up. It could be seen that it was covered with huge round holes with a diameter of 50 meters. At this time, Mo had already discovered the true face of this thing. It turned out to be an octopus's tentacle. Those round holes with a diameter of 50 meters were actually the suction cups on its tentacles. At this time, the tentacle emerged from the blood river, and it was more than 2,000 meters long. Even though Mo had seen the white snake that Su Fu transformed into, he was still shocked at this time. One had to know that this was just one tentacle. Who knew how many more tentacles it had not emerged? Although the sea dragon was now a wild beast and was not afraid of any creatures on Earth, it was always better to be careful. Chapter 2:15. That huge tentacle was 2,000 meters tall. Seeing this, Mo Shi controlled the sea dragon clone to move up. It wasn't that he was afraid. With the current strength of the sea dragon clone, it was invincible on Earth. However, with his usual life, it was better to be careful before he figured out what was going on. However, just as he was controlling the sea dragon clone to move up, an undercurrent suddenly surged quickly in the dark bottom of the sea. Even though the sea dragon's body had now reached 190 meters. At this time, it was still involuntarily moved more than 500 meters to the side by this undercurrent. Looking back, he saw more than 50 tentacles stretching out from the bottom of the blood river. Each tentacle was more than 2,000 meters long. They were like more than 50 thick pythons, swimming toward the sea dragon clone. Mo Shi thought to himself, "What AF** King Big Octopus?" Then, he controlled the sea dragon clone and directly released the pressure of a level 9 wild beast. The 50 or so tentacles that were attacking the sea dragon clone suddenly froze. Then, as if they had been electrocuted, they began to tremble. Then, they quickly shrank down into the blood river. This was the natural pressure of a wild beast on a super mutated beast. Then the sea dragon clone opened its cave-like mouth and roared, "Roar, roar!" At the bottom of the blood river, dozens of 2,000-meter-long tentacles stretched out again. But this time, it didn't attack the sea dragon clone. Instead, it raised the dozens of tentacles like a human surrendering. At the same time, its body also revealed the blood river. Just as Mo Shi had guessed, this was a super mutated octopus. It had lived at the bottom of the sea for who knew how many years. It happened to encounter the mutation of the virus X and grew into its current form. If it weren't for the invisible restrictions on Earth, it would have been a wild beast by now. Mo Shi didn't hold back. He controlled the sea dragon clone and flicked out more than 10 sanguisurincus. The sanguisurincus pierced into the body of the giant octopus and began to suck. Although the super mutated octopus was extremely frightened, it didn't even dare to struggle under the natural pressure of a wild beast. It took about half an hour to devour the super mutated octopus. Then he signed in his mind. System, check in for a special event. Sign in successful. Sign in event, killed level 10 super mutated octopus. Sign in reward, thousands of tentacles. Mo Shi checked the skill description of the tentacles in his mind. His heart skipped a beat. Then, he controlled the sea dragon clone's skin and flesh to squirm. A tentacle slowly grew out of it. Although this tentacle was not as big as the super mutant octopus's tentacle, it could be lengthened or shortened at will. At this moment, under Mo Shi's control, it continued to extend until it finally reached a length of 5,000 meters. A mosasaurus that was more than 100 meters long had tentacles that were 5,000 meters long. This made Mo Shi feel incredulous. Furthermore, these 5,000-meter-long tentacles had a suction cup every 100 meters. Mo Shi controlled the tentacle and placed it on the sarcomas in front of him. It just so happened that each of the suction cups was sucking on a sarcoma. Then, Mo Shi's mind moved. From all the suction cups, sanguisurincus poked out and pierced into the sarcoma. It began to suck. In this way, a single tentacle could absorb 50 sarcomas at the same time. Then, another 49 tentacles stretched out from the sea dragon clone's body. The absorption efficiency instantly reached 50 times that of before. Before this, Mo Shi was still thinking about how big the entire Mariana Trench mother nest was. There were so many sarcomas inside. If he really wanted to absorb all of them, it would probably take 3 to 5 months. Now this skill came at the right time. With one skill, the efficiency increased to 50 times. According to this, it would probably be finished in 3 to 5 days. The truth was just as Mo Shi expected. In this way, it only took 4 days for the entire Mariana Trench to be completely devoured. In the entire Mariana Trench, all the sarcomas were completely devoured by the sea dragon clone. The pool of blood in the broodmother's nest had already begun to fade. The thick sanguisurincus around the mother nest had all withered. It was also at this moment that a tearing pain suddenly came from within the sea dragon clone's body. Mo Shi felt this trace of pain and immediately switched his consciousness back to his main body. He waited for 10 minutes before coming back. He checked the attributes. Species, Sea Dragon. Level, Level 10 Dire Beast. Ability, Evolution by Devouring, Dragon Psychic Attack, Immunity to Sonic Attacks, Myriad Sanguisurincus, Myriad Tentacles. Sure enough, it had advanced to level 10. At this point, Mo Shi could be considered to have completed a small goal. If the Flaming Land sent more hunters or psychic masters, Mo Shi wouldn't have to do anything at all. The sea dragon clone would be able to crush them directly. And the next goal was to improve his strength. Now Mo Shi had to find a suitable opportunity to break through to the level of a hunter. The sea dragon clone was limited by his realm and could only be stuck as a level 10 dire beast. Mo Shi was thinking that if he signed in at the dragon ruins under the Bermuda Triangle, it might be possible to break through the limit. At that time, he would become a hunter and the sea dragon clone would become a strong dire beast. Wouldn't that be perfect? But just as Mo Shi was about to set off for the Atlantic Ocean, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then he controlled the sea dragon clone and swam into the personal reservoir. The next moment, his consciousness had returned to base C1. The personal reservoir had a special feature. If it was summoned by Mo Shi's main body, it could be summoned anywhere. If it was summoned by the sea dragon clone, it could only be summoned at the place where it disappeared. Therefore, Mo Shi let the sea dragon clone swim into the personal reservoir. Then he took a step. His figure instantly disappeared, leaving only a 100-meter-tall dragon phantom in place. At the same time, next to the blood waterfall in the Death Valley of the South Pole, more than 2,000 blue and white light balls suddenly appeared. Mo Shi's virus clone had been guarding here the whole time. He watched these blue and white light balls slowly condense into human figures, but he didn't run away in fear. Instead, he followed Mo Shi's instructions and stared at these slowly appearing human figures. At the same time, his eyes were blood red. He had already opened the blood demon's eye. Soon, when those people's figures were completely condensed, all of their levels had already been seen by the virus doppelganger. The strongest one was a level 8 hunter. Then there were a few level 7 hunters. There was also a level 6 psychic. The remaining 2,000 people were basically all hunters below level 5. And among them, there was a cheetah-shaped mecha that was more than 5 meters long and 2 meters tall. The entire mecha was made of a metal that didn't exist on Earth. Its body was full of mechanical and power. The sharp claws at the end of its limbs were made of a metal unique to the Flaming Origin continent. It was extremely sharp. Its sharp teeth glinted coldly under the sunlight. Its tail was also full of sharp blades. Chapter 2:16. The cheetah mecha cover was filled with a sense of machinery and power. Disregarding everything else, just this steel body alone was made for battle. Mechas were extremely expensive on the Flaming Dawn continent. The Sandstorm mercenary group had more than 30,000 people, but they only had one mecha. And now, he was looking for his brother-in-law, so Xianxia brought this mecha over. It was obvious how much he valued his wife. As soon as these people appeared, they naturally saw Mo Shi's virus clone. Bertha, who had an exaggerated figure, saw Mo Shi's virus clone and her eyes immediately turned cold. She hurriedly used her telekinesis to drag the virus clone up. She directly grabbed it in front of her. A murderous aura appeared between her eyebrows. Her voice was as cold as iron. "Speak, did you see my brother?" The virus clone didn't speak. A cold light flashed in Bertha's eyes. She used her telekinesis. Rip! The sound of cloth being torn was heard. The virus clone was directly torn into several pieces. 2 drops of blood splashed on her delicate face. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she reached out and wiped a drop of blood. She stuck out her tongue and sucked the blood on her finger clean. She was like a child who had just eaten a snack and was sucking her finger. The entire mercenary group saw this scene and were all speechless. Who was the most ruthless in the entire mercenary group? There was only one answer in everyone's mind: the leader's wife. If anyone thought that the leader's wife Bertha was just a beautiful and sexy woman with a hot body, then they were completely wrong. She had a ruthless personality that was a great contrast to her appearance. Her gentleness and sweetness were only reserved for the leader. And the leader Xianxia also doted on his woman. At this moment, he tucked a strand of hair in front of Bertha's eyes behind her ear. With a gentle smile on his face he asked, "What does this blood taste like?" Bertha's pretty face was slightly red as she said shyly, "The smell of the natives." Then she said with some anticipation, "In the Flaming Continent, you always told me not to kill people casually. I listened to you. Now that we're here, we can finally kill people, right?" Xianxia caressed her hair lovingly and nodded. Of course, this is a hunting ground. The natives here are not real people. They are just prey. At this moment, countless tentacles grew out from the torn body of the virus clone. These tentacles were pulling at a few pieces of flesh, trying to reassemble them. When Bertha saw this, a cruel smile appeared on her face. It's actually an infected body. In the next moment, her psychokinesis exploded in full force and blasted towards the pile of flesh. Soon, the virus in the pile of flesh was killed. He had lost the ability to heal himself. Then Xianxia said to a captain behind him, "Launch the drone." The captain nodded, then said to a man with a belt around his waist, "Drone lift off." The man nodded and pressed a button on his waist. The next moment, a light blue virtual interface popped out from his belt and a light blue virtual keyboard with the same light blue virtual keyboard popped out. Then, his fingers danced quickly on the keyboard. Hundreds of fist-sized cabins popped out from the body of the cheetah mech. In these cabins, there were fist-sized drones that looked like spiders but had wings. They flapped their wings at an extremely fast frequency and rose into the air. Then they flew in all directions. Then, the cheetah mech that had been motionless. Its eyes suddenly glowed with a faint green light. Its head turned 360 degrees. Then it stretched its limbs. Then it swung its tail. In the next moment, it jumped out. One step covered more than 50 meters. In a few leaps, it disappeared into the distant Death Valley. Xianxia looked at this scene and patted the shoulder of the young man operating the mech. Good job, kid. You're getting better and better. One person operating 100 drones and a mech, and you're still so skillful. You're a genius. The young man's waving hands suddenly stopped. He hurriedly said in fear, "Thank you for the compliment, Captain. Practice makes perfect." Xianxia nodded. Then he said to the woman with an exaggerated figure, "Bertha. No one visits the first hunting ground. Father-in-law's mind is not on the hunting ground, and no one takes care of it. It has been developed freely for decades without even a map. We can only rely on these drones to find underlings." Bertha nodded obediently. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Half an hour later, at the edge of Antarctica, Sher's figure stopped. He faced the south. There was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. Just now, he had already known the strength of these people through the detection of the virus clone. The strongest was a level 8 hunter and several level 7 hunters. There was also a level 6 psychic master. There was also a cheetah mech. He had already known how terrifying mechs were on the flaming land through the memories of the people he had killed before. The mech had an energy shield that could resist almost any physical, psychic, and energy attack. And the mech could shoot out energy rays. The power of this energy ray was exactly the same as the rays fired by the energy weapons of the hunters. And even if the hunters reached level 10, they could only use the energy weapon 10 times. And as long as the mech's battery was still charged, it could keep using the energy weapon. It was no exaggeration to say that having a mech was equivalent to having a great hunter. Of course, the mech also had its fatal weakness. That was the person who controlled it. As long as the controller was killed, the mech would lose control. So Sher's dragons will scanned more than 100 kilometers away. After the cheetah mech jumped over, he did not pay attention to it. At this moment, in the sky, a fist-sized drone was flying over his head. This beast-shaped drone was more advanced than the ball-shaped drone last time. The beast-shaped drone could not only be used for searching, but also for fighting. Its 8 legs were extremely sharp and could easily pierce through a human skull. At the same time, its compound eyes could also shoot lasers. Although this laser was not as lethal as energy weapons, it could easily kill a level 1 hunter. At the same time, Sher also knew that the surface of this drone could also generate an energy shield. It could resist any form of psychic, energy, and physical attacks. Even a small drone was so powerful. One could imagine how strong the flaming land was. Sher held his breath and focused. His clothes and skin had completely turned into the same color as the snow on the ground. At the same time, he buried himself deep in the snow to avoid the drone search and thermal imaging. Chapter 217. Sher detected a spider drone flying over his head. He did not attack. After a while, another spider drone flew over his head. His dragon will spread out quickly. In an instant, he detected the location of the 2,500 people across 130 kilometers. Bertha immediately sensed it when he probed with his draconic will. She frowned and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Someone is spying on us with telekinesis. As she spoke, her telekinesis also spread out quickly to resist Mo Shi's dragon will. However, Mo Shi's dragon will did not come into direct contact with her telekinesis at all. Instead, it blasted towards the young man operating the mech. Bang! The young man's body instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Everyone around was shocked. The captain beside him quickly shouted, "Little Jian, take over his mech." Since the mech was so important, it was naturally impossible for it to have only one operator. There were two substitutes beside him. If one died, the other two could replace him at any time. At the same time, Bertha, who had a ridiculously good figure, quickly spread out her telekinesis. She wanted to compete with Mo Shi's telekinesis. However, when she probed, her psychokinesis hit nothing but air. The next moment, her brows suddenly furrowed into a knot. He raised his head abruptly and channeled all of his mental power to resist the attack. However, it was too late. Boom, 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 boom. Around them, 100 invisible meteors smashed down with a loud rumble. Most of these people were level 3 to level 5 hunters. They also felt that the situation was not good. As they activated their genetic weapons, they all jumped in all directions to dodge. The guy who was about to take over the mech was hit on the head by the dragon will meteorite. He was instantly smashed into meat paste. Boom, 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 boom. Explosions kept coming from all directions. Huge craters kept appearing. Terrifying shockwaves continued to spread out. Even though Bertha had blocked most of the dragon will meteorites, there were still more than 20 meteorites that came crashing down. Almost all of these 2,500 people were sent flying by the huge impact. In this wave of attack, more than 10 telekinesis grandmasters were directly torn to shreds by the huge shock wave. As for the remaining 5 psychic grandmasters, including Bertha, they all had powerful life-saving trump cards. The instant the shock wave hit, a layer of armor covered the surface of these telekinesis grandmasters' bodies. Only then would he not be torn apart. Of course, there were those who were too lucky and were directly smashed in the head by the dragon will meteorite. Even if they had armor, they were already dead. As for those level 1 hunters, more than 100 of them died on the spot. The rest of the scavengers below level 3 were either seriously or lightly injured. Hunters above level 3 had extremely fast reflexes, and their bodies were extremely strong. Therefore, the shockwave did not tear their bodies apart. What was even more terrifying was that a dragon will meteorite had already smashed into a level 7 hunter's head. However, the hunter did not suffer any other injuries except that his body was smashed into the ground and his head was dripping with blood. He could even move and fight normally. Mo Shi was secretly shocked when he saw all this. The physical strength of the scavengers was too abnormal. At this moment, the mercenaries from the Flaming Beginning continent were even more shocked than Mo Shi. In their opinion, the first hunting ground was simply a barren land. Moreover, due to the rules of the hunting ground, it was impossible for a level 10 great hunter to appear. It was even more impossible for a telekinesis grandmaster to appear. However, the attack just now was clearly the work of a telekinesis grandmaster. It was very likely that the attacker was a level 6 telekinesis grandmaster. How was this possible? The leader, Xianxia, was even more shocked and furious. Initially, he had thought that with so many hunters, they would be able to dominate the lousy first hunting ground and sweep through everything in their path. However, he did not expect that they would be ambushed as soon as they arrived. They had lost more than 100 hunters and more than a dozen telekinesis grandmasters. This loss was simply too great. Damn it! Sandstorm Mercenary Group. Listen to my orders. Raze this barren land to the ground. He roared in exasperation. It was as if an adult had been slapped by a child in front of everyone. Everyone in the mercenary group was also furious. This barren land, a low-level hunting ground, had caused the Sandstorm Mercenary Group to suffer such a great loss. This was outrageous. The leader shouted to the third substitute mecha operator, "Little Hai, operate the mecha." Little Hai's heart suddenly tightened. He wanted to say that he had only been learning from his master for a month. However, When he saw the leader's murderous eyes and the leader's wife's eyes, he trembled. His heart suddenly trembled. He hurriedly replied, "Yes." As he spoke, he untied the belt from his master's waist and wrapped it around his waist. He turned on the virtual keyboard and virtual screen. Then, he tapped a few times on the keyboard and silently opened a document. When the leader saw the title of the document, he almost spat out blood. The title of the document was Cheetah G35-1 Mecha Manual. Pfft. When the surrounding people saw this, they almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Bertha's heart was already burning with anger. She clearly felt that the opponent's telekinesis was similar to hers, but so many people were killed right under her nose. This made her very unhappy. At this time, she saw Little Hai silently open the manual. He was even more furious than before. She moved her telekinesis. Rip, Little Hai was directly torn into several pieces. Xianxia, who was next to her, did not have time to persuade her. He could only helplessly shake his head. At this time, Bertha's telekinesis spread to a radius of 60 kilometers. As a level 6 telekinesis master, her telekinesis could spread to a maximum radius of 60 kilometers, to explore everything around her. She wanted to find the guy who had just used his telekinesis. However, no matter how she searched, even if she searched every stone and every piece of snow in the area, she could not find the person who carried out the attack. At this time, Wuxia jumped out of the snow pit where he was hiding. He dusted off the snow and ice on his body and glanced at the blue sky. Those drones had lost control and had already flown away aimlessly. The cheetah mecha had also lost control and was wandering aimlessly on the ice field. Wuxia smiled faintly and took a step forward. He instantly disappeared on the spot. Only the next giant dragon shadow was left behind. Not long after, Wuxia appeared in the sight of those people from the flaming beginning continent. Their faces all turned cold. Bertha immediately wanted to use her telekinesis to tear Wuxia into pieces. However, Xianxia next to her stopped her and said, "Maybe this person knows the whereabouts of our little brother. It's not too late to kill him after interrogating him." Only then did Bertha dismiss the idea of directly tearing Wuxia into pieces. At the same time, Xianxia stared at Wuxia with a solemn expression and said to the others, "Everyone, get ready to fight at any time. This person is not simple." Chapter 218. Wuxia walked slowly towards the 2,000 people. The 2,000 people did not make a move immediately. But everyone was on high alert, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. When they first arrived at the first hunting ground, they looked down on everything here. In their eyes, coming to the first hunting ground was just a vacation. However, after experiencing the telekinesis meteorite, they were extremely vigilant against this person. After all, this person was likely to be a psychic master above level 6. Wuxia came to a place 50 meters away from these people and stood still. Everyone saw that Wuxia looked exactly the same as the infected person they had killed before. They were a little confused. Could this guy be a twin? Xianxia tapped twice on the watch on his left wrist. The holographic images of a long-haired young man and a bald middle-aged man appeared beside him. He pointed at the two images and asked Wuxia, "Have you seen them?" Wuxia did not hide and nodded, "Yes." When Bertha heard this, an anxious look appeared in her eyes as she asked, "Where are they?" Wuxia's face was calm as he said casually, "Kill him." He said it so casually, as if he had just killed an ant. As soon as he said this, the scene fell silent. The next moment, Bertha's psychokinesis suddenly covered the sky and pressed down on Wuxia. "Die for me!" A roar full of anger and hatred came from her mouth. Rip! The sound of cloth being torn could be heard. Wuxia's body was torn into several pieces. It was even more miserable than the doppelganger beside the blood waterfall. However, this was only Wuxia's doppelganger. When he knew that his strength was far inferior to the other party, how could Wuxia take the risk? He just let this doppelganger bring his personal reservoir to those people. At this time, the doppelganger had been killed. But a circular hole with a diameter of 50 meters appeared in the air. Everyone looked at the circular hole that suddenly appeared and were a little confused. What is this? Some experienced mercenaries felt their hearts palpitate when they arrived at the entrance of the cave. "Not good, quickly disperse." The old mercenary screamed and quickly turned around to flee. However, it was already too late. A figure leaped out from the cave in an instant. He swallowed the old mercenary in one gulp. The old mercenary was a level 3 hunter. He didn't even have time to scream before he was buried in the belly of the figure. At the same time, the figure's body continued to emit crisp sounds. Ka ka ka, accompanied by this sound, the figure rapidly expanded. In the end, it reached a length of 200 meters. At this moment, the figure looked like a crocodile. However, the scales on its body were more solid than those of a crocodile. Its limbs were thicker than a crocodile's. 4 claws, each as big as a house. Its tail was as thick as a giant python, and it was almost 100 meters long. Moreover, the long tail was triangular. Every edge was an extremely sharp blade. At the sight of this, all the low-level hunters were dumbfounded. This is a desolate beast? How is that possible? How can there be a desolate beast in the first hunting ground? According to the information they had obtained, the strongest mutated beast in the first hunting ground was only a level 10 mutated beast due to the limitations of the rules. How could there be a desolate beast? Moreover, this desolate beast had swallowed a level 3 hunter in one gulp. It was definitely a desolate beast of level 5 or above. As for the high-level hunters who had reached level 5 and above, their expressions changed slightly. However, that was all. Looking at the speed of this desolate beast, it was at most level 5 or so. As hunters of level 5 or above, they didn't have to worry at all. Moreover, there was the leader, a level 8 hunter, and the leader's wife, a level 6 psychic master. Why would they panic? However, in the next moment, they knew how stupid their thoughts were. The speed of this desolate beast was a little slow and couldn't outrun the hunters of level 3 or above. However, the flesh on its body wriggled. In an instant, a sanguisurincus as thick as an arm was shot out. This sanguisurincus shot out like lightning and directly pierced through the body of a level 5 hunter. At the same time, it continued to shoot forward like lightning and pierced through the bodies of more than 10 people in succession. In the next moment, this sanguisurincus exploded into hundreds of tiny sanguisurincus in these people's bodies. They pierced out of these people's bodies. It looked like hundreds of blood-red toothpicks had pierced into a ball of yarn. This time, everyone's expressions changed drastically, including those level 7 hunters and Xianxia, who was a level 8 hunter. This desolate beast could actually kill a level 5 hunter in an instant. Its strength was at least level 6 or even higher. Just as they were shocked, 50 sanguisurincus shot out from the surface of the sea dragon clone's body in all directions. Puff, 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 puff. Hundreds of people were instantly pierced by these 50 sanguisurincus. Then, they were pierced into hedgehogs by the tiny sanguisurincus that burst out from the sanguisurincus. Then, these sanguisurincus were retracted and a second wave of sanguisurincus was quickly released. 2 waves in a row had taken the lives of more than 300 scavenger hunters. Among them, there was no lack of level 5 hunters. Mo Shi's consciousness controlled the sea dragon clone to continuously shoot out sanguisurincus, harvesting the lives of those people. Although the sea dragon clone's speed was not as fast as those hunters, the speed of the sanguisurincus shot out far exceeded that of those humans. Moreover, these sanguisurincus seemed to have no limit to the distance. Even if some people had already escaped 2 kilometers away, their bodies were still pierced through. None of the hunters could withstand this sanguisurincus attack. Even those who had life-saving trump cards instantly condensed armor on the surface of their bodies and used genetic martial arts to resist. In front of this sanguisurincus, at most, they would be delayed by a few seconds. In the end, they would still be pierced through. Even Mo Shi did not expect these sanguisurincus to be so terrifying. Seeing this, the captain's expression was extremely solemn. Was the sandstorm mercenary group that he had painstakingly built going to be destroyed just like this? He was shocked and angry. He shouted to Bertha next to him, "Try to suppress it with telekinesis." Bertha next to him was shocked. "I'm already trying, but this wild beast seems to be able to use telekinesis, and its telekinesis is on par with mine. My telekinesis can't affect it at all." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was even more shocked in their hearts. A desolate beast with such powerful strength actually possessed the power of thought. What the hell was this? One had to know that telekinesis had appeared in zombies on the Flaming Land. There were blood breeds with telekinesis. There were also zombies with telekinesis. But there had never been a wild beast with telekinesis. In the midst of his shock, Sha-7 shouted, "All psychokinesis, use telekinesis to suppress it together. All hunters, use energy weapons at the same time." All the scavenger hunters were shocked when they heard this. Chapter 219. All hunters, attack together with your energy weapons. Sha-Qi, the captain, commanded. All the hunters felt a chill in their hearts when they heard this. After using their energy weapons, the energy in their bodies would be depleted. If their energy weapons couldn't kill this wild beast, then they could only wait for death. It seemed that the captain was going to risk his life. But there was no other way at this time. They couldn't escape anyway. This wild beast seemed to have the intelligence of a human. The further they ran, the faster they would die. Therefore, the genetic weapons on the right arms of all the remaining 2,000 hunters emitted a scorching red and white light. They turned into energy weapons. The next moment, more than 2,000 red and white lights shot out from their energy weapons. They instantly attacked the sea dragon. Hiss hiss hiss. Hiss hiss hiss. Hiss hiss hiss. Their energy weapons instantly pierced through the defense of the sea dragon clone. Thousands of holes were shot out of the sea dragon clone's body. However, compared to the huge body of the sea dragon clone, these holes caused by energy were not worth mentioning. For the sea dragon, which was more than 200 meters long, it was equivalent to more than 2,000 needles stabbing its body at the same time. Of course, these 2,000 needles were only a little too deep. The sea dragon clone's attack did not stop at all. Every time the Sanguisurincus attacked, it could kill more than 100 people. But at this moment, a ray directly hit the sea dragon's left eye. The sea dragon immediately roared in pain. Roar! Amidst the roar, it suddenly opened its mouth. A stream of green liquid suddenly spurted out. The green liquid fell on the body of an armored scavenger. The armor on the hunter's body was corroded in a very short time like rusty iron pieces and slid off one after another. Then, the flesh on his body kept making sizzling sounds as it was quickly corroded. "Ah, help me!" The hunter let out an extremely miserable cry. Just hearing it made one's scalp tingle and their hearts turn cold. The strong acid that the sea dragon clone spat out was much more corrosive than the strong acid of the bloodlust zombie slayer. The hunter's flesh and blood were like melted chocolate, falling down quickly. Eerie white bones were exposed. Then, even the bones were completely melted. Even the ground beneath his feet was corroded, forming a huge bowl-shaped pit with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Moreover, the sea dragon's spray covered a wide area. When it opened its huge mouth, everything within a radius of several hundred meters was covered. Hundreds of hunters within hundreds of meters suddenly screamed and turned into a pool of blood. Even a level 7 hunter had no power to resist. The sea dragon spat out several mouthfuls in a row. More than 500 hunters and psyche masters were turned into a pool of blood in the strong acid. This scene caused everyone to be incomparably terrified. As mercenaries, they had seen many dead people in their lives. However, this was the first time they had seen so many people being corroded to death by strong acid. This was the first time they had seen so many people die at once. And what worried them the most was that they all knew that desolate beasts had the ability to breathe out energy. This was the most powerful killing move of a desolate beast. Up until now, this desolate beast had yet to use its energy breath. It was like a sword hanging over their heads that could fall at any time. Naturally, Mo sure couldn't casually use the energy breath. Although the energy breath was strong, it was the same as the energy weapons of the hunters. Every time it was used, it would be used less. Even the sea dragon clone, a level 10 desolate beast, could only use it 10 times. At this moment, another energy ray directly penetrated the heart of the sea dragon clone. However, this didn't kill the sea dragon clone. Hundreds of tentacles grew out of its heart and sewed it up like needles and threads. And it was more seamless than a needle and thread. However, Mo sure could clearly feel that this time, the tentacles in the sea dragon clone's body sewed up the wound much slower than before. This was because the dozens of psyche masters on the other side were using their psyche power to kill the virus and cells in the sea dragon clone's body at the molecular level. The sea dragon clone's level 3 dragon will was originally equivalent to the psyche power of a level 6 psyche master. However, there were dozens of psyche masters on the other side helping. The sea dragon clone's dragon will was a little strenuous. At this moment, the head of the sea dragon clone was pierced by 2 more rays. The tentacles formed by the virus in its body were even more powerless when they were sewn up. Seeing this, Mo Sure immediately controlled the sea dragon clone. It opened its mouth abruptly. A blood-red energy pillar was suddenly spat out from its mouth. This energy pillar was more than 100 times thicker than the rays emitted by the hunters. It was more than 2 meters thick in diameter. Furthermore, the energy pillar swept across the area. The energy pillar of the sea dragon clone was unlike the energy rays of the hunters, which could only last for a few seconds at a time. This energy pillar actually lasted for dozens of seconds. It swept left and right, up and down, vertically, and in a circle. The area covered was extremely large and the range was extremely wide. It made it impossible for the hunters to hide. All the hunters who were swept by the energy pillar were almost instantly turned into flying ashes. With just this sweep, more than 500 hunters were killed. After another round of shooting, more than half of the remaining hunters were killed. Now, less than 100 of the 2,500 people were left. Of those great Psyche masters, only 2 were left. One was Bertha, a level 6 Psyche master, and the other was a level 3 Psyche master. It wasn't until now that all the mercenaries realized that they were finished. This dire beast wasn't like the level 5 or level 6 dire beast they had thought before. Even the leader of the level 8 hunters was helpless in front of this dire beast. Then it was at least a level 9 dire beast, or even a level 10 dire beast. In the face of such an existence, no one could deal with it unless the cheetah mech came over. But the 3 people who controlled the cheetah mech were already dead. If that was the case, the rest of them would only die without a doubt. Mo Sure was also quite shocked at this time. He knew that the energy attack of the sea dragon clone was powerful, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. The so-called trump cards and magic treasures of these hunters and psychic masters were completely useless in the face of the energy breath of the sea dragon's clone. If he had known that the energy attack of the sea dragon clone was so powerful, he would have used a big move as soon as he came up. Why bother with sanguisurincus, strong acid, and the like? Next, he planned to use another energy breath to kill the rest of the people. But at this moment, Long Xiachi suddenly raised his hands and shouted, "Let's go! I surrender, all of us surrender." This time the remaining 100 or so mercenaries were stunned. Bertha was also stunned. In all of their impressions, Xiaxia had always been a person who would rather die than submit, a person who would rather break than bend. Even if everyone else surrendered, he would never surrender. Why did he take the initiative to surrender before the others? Chapter 220. No one had expected that before the others had surrendered, their commander would be the first to surrender. And no one expected their leader to surrender to a desolate beast. Desolate beasts basically had no intelligence. Did it know how to surrender to it? But what they didn't expect was that after their leader raised his hands and shouted his surrender, this terrifying desolate beast had actually stopped its attack. Xiachi heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and explained to everyone. This desolate beast is not as smart as a desolate beast. It's more like a human. Even if it's not that smart, there must be a human controlling it. Everyone understood. It turned out that their leader was surrendering to the human behind the desolate beast. But they still didn't understand. With their leader's unyielding character, how could he surrender? Xiachi said to everyone, "Retract your genetic and energy weapons. Quick, don't wait for it to go back on its words." Everyone looked at each other. One by one, they retracted their genetic and energy weapons. Based on the current situation, if they continued to fight, they would probably die in the next second. If they surrendered as their leader said, although the desolate beast might not let them go, at least they would die a slower death. Who wouldn't want to live a few more seconds? Their leader, Xiachi, shouted to the sea dragon clone. "I'm the leader of all of them. If you want to kill, kill me alone. Please let my brothers and my woman go." The sea dragon clone didn't move. Xiachi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the desolate beast didn't intend to attack again. He turned around and said to everyone, "Every one of you, join my sandstorm mercenary group. You're my brothers." "Hi Xiachi, made a wrong decision and lost the lives of so many of my brothers. I can't bear to see the remaining 100 or so brothers die. Then, he turned around and looked at his woman affectionately. Bertha, I'm too stupid and caused the death of so many of our brothers. But I can't watch you die for nothing. I'll stay. All of you leave. Nah. The remaining 100 or so people in the mercenary group felt their blood boiling. Their leader was willing to give up his life for them. How could they let their leader die for nothing? Leader, let's fight it. If we die together. When we first joined the mercenary group, we were already brothers. Since we can't survive, we might as well die together. Bertha's tears fell like rain as she sobbed. Xianxia, I'll accompany you. All of our brothers will accompany you. Xianxia's eyes were also filled with tears as he reprimanded his brothers. Shut up. You are all people with parents and families. If you die here, who will your parents and wives depend on in the future? If I can use my life to exchange for all of your lives, as the regiment commander, I will not shirk my duty. He then turned around and said to Bertha, who had an exaggerated figure. Bertha, don't think about me when you go back. Find a good man and marry him. As he spoke, his own voice was choked with emotions. He hugged Bertha tightly, as if he didn't want to leave her again. Bertha's tears fell like rain. Xianxia, no. If you die, how can I live alone? Xianxia, we agreed to die together. However, before she could finish her sentence, she stopped abruptly. Rip. Her body was torn into two halves. And the person who tore her body apart was none other than someone else. It was her husband, her lover, Xianxia. This sudden change occurred. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their minds were a little jammed, and they couldn't react in time. Even Wuxia was shocked. Previously, Xianxia had said that he wanted to surrender and let them go, and that he would die alone. Wuxia naturally didn't believe these words. He had been guarding against Xianxia. If he dared to make a sudden move, Wuxia would be able to turn him into ashes in an instant. However, Wuxia had never expected that Xianxia would suddenly attack and kill his beautiful wife under such circumstances. What kind of F***king plot was this? Just as everyone was still in a daze, Xianxia swung his hands again. His wife, who had been torn into two halves, was torn into pieces again. His expression was ferocious, and a genetic weapon suddenly appeared on his right arm. Then, a red and white light shone from the genetic weapon, and it transformed into an energy weapon. The next moment, a red and white light suddenly shot out from the energy weapon. It instantly shot towards the more than 100 mercenaries. Bang! A single sweep of the gun had killed more than 20 wild hunters. Bang! With another sweep of the gun, more than 20 hunters were directly shot into two. The remaining mercenaries only reacted at this moment. Some quickly turned around and wanted to escape. Some wanted to form a genetic weapon to counterattack. However, their levels were much lower than Xianxia's. Moreover, Xianxia was scheming against them. It was already too late for them to form a genetic weapon now. Bang bang bang. After a few more sweeps, the more than 100 mercenaries all fell to the ground. These mercenaries, including Xianxia's wife, Bertha, all had an expression of extreme disbelief on their faces. Even until death, they couldn't believe that their leader, who had always treated them like brothers, would suddenly turn around and kill them. Bertha also couldn't believe that her husband, who had always been obedient to her and spoiled her like a princess, would suddenly turn around and kill her. And his method was so cruel. Previously, everyone thought that Bertha was the most ruthless person in the entire mercenary group. But now, they understood that the most ruthless person in the mercenary group was their leader, Xianxia. After Xianxia killed those people, he confirmed that none of them were left alive. There was a pleased look on his face. He let out a long sigh and looked up at the sky. Awesome! But a moment later, he knelt down toward the east with tears in his eyes. He knocked his head heavily on the ground and said, "Dad, Mom, Big Brother, I've finally avenged you." As he spoke, his voice was choked with sobs, as if he had returned to several years ago. Then he told his story to the sea dragon clone. 23 years ago, I was only a 3-month-old child. At that time, my dad was the owner of the first hunting ground. He has a subordinate named Belky who plotted to kill my parents and my brother and took over the first hunting ground. Fortunately, my father's guard at that time risked his life to bring me out of the encirclement. Later on, I gradually grew up and founded the Sandstorm Mercenary Group. It's also that one day, I can fight my way to the first hunting island, avenge my parents and elder brother, and take back the first hunting ground. It was only later that I discovered that Bertzi's daughter Bertha was actually a psychic grandmaster. It wasn't easy to kill them. So I could only take the opportunity to get close to Bertha and finally married her. I planned to find an opportunity to kill their entire family for revenge. But if I did it casually, it was likely that someone would find out. This time, coming to the first hunting ground gave me the opportunity to kill Bertha first. Once Bertha is dead, I will have a greater chance to kill Bertzi and his wife when I go back. At this point, Shao-Chi wiped his eyes and said to the sea dragon clone, "Sir, please give me a chance to take revenge. After I've taken my revenge, I'll come back and be at your disposal." You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.